Peter is the co-author of the British bestseller, Left at Eastgate. That was a good one. A first-hand account of the Rendlesham Forest UFO Incident. It's cover-up and investigation, as well as the author of Deliberate Deception, a case of disinformation in the UFO research community. No. Disinformation in ufology? It can't be. Peter Robbins, welcome.
Hey, stranger, long time no speak.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has.
I saw you just had a sort of a problem there with your Skype before we connected.
Indeed. We'll hope it doesn't return.
Well, if it does, I went through this once before last week, Peter, where it was like dying and coming back, dying and coming back.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so if that happens,
I got my number.
Yes, I'll give you a landline call. All right, so it is great hearing your voice again, and a lot of people, frankly and honestly, don't know what Rendlesham Forest is all about.
Sure.
Been a long time. Give us a brief description of actually what you know of that happened.
Okay. Best kind of capsule description I can give you is on 3 consecutive nights between Christmas and New Year's, 1980, a series of UFO events happened over and around a highly secured pair of NATO bases, RAF Bentwaters, which had been leased to the Americans since World War II, and RAF Woodbridge, its sister base, an RAF base about 7 or 8 miles away. The bases are located in Suffolk, East Anglia, which is about 70 miles or so northeast of London, to locate it in the southeast of England. On the first night, the main event involved 2 gentlemen who are fairly well known now from all of their appearances, the fact that they had a book come out last year that they wrote with Nick Pope called Encounter of the Rendlesham Forest. John Burroughs was an airman first class and member of the law enforcement police. Jim Penniston was a sergeant and a member of the security specialists, the security police on base. John observed a light go down in the woods from the east gate of RAF Woodbridge. It did not indicate a crash. There was no ground concussion, explosion, fire. It was a very tense moment. In the Cold War, he radioed in for permission to investigate. Sergeant Penniston came along with Airman Cabanasac. Cabanasac was also a security cop, and he drove Jim and John into the forest to the degree that the vehicle could travel. They moved in on foot and encountered a machine of undetermined origin.
Okay, so we have 3 guys now who have gone toward this thing that didn't look like a crash, but a landing instead.
Yeah.
Into the forest they go. They get up to it, and they find what?
Well, Cabanasac stays with the vehicle. He's watching them from a distance.
I see.
It's in various treatments. They're the ones to have on the show to confirm it, but tapering up, triangular-looking craft with the appearance of black glass. They observe, Jim observes that there are markings, symbols, hieroglyphs, whatever you want to call them. The 2 of them have missing time. They're not, everything is not accounted for, but the machine leaves impressions in the soil, which are documented the next day. Plaster casts are taken.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Yeah.
We've got these witnesses staring at this damn thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they have missing time, which means maybe they don't remember, but before we talk about impressions, we've got to talk about liftoff. I mean, does it take off? What happens?
Well, number one, Jim, in 2010, stated publicly something that he has felt privately for 30-odd years, which was when he touched one of the markings on the craft, a code downloaded into his head, which he believes is a message from the intelligences who were responsible for the event. I respectfully disagree with him on that. He feels that time travelers from the future contacted him at that moment with a message for humanity. And
what is that message?
Well, it is the coordinates, longitude and latitude of 6 locations, mystical locations around the world, including Sedona, Arizona, a mythical island, a sunken island off the coast of Ireland.
I hope one of them isn't CERN.
No, I don't think so. A temple in China, a temple in Greece, and 2 other locations, and a kind of stilted message that, with respect, sounds for me like kind of clips out of a science fiction movie dialogue. Nick Pope, who wrote the book with them, ponders whether or not it's a message within a message, and perhaps that will be broken someday, and within that, and something about the longitude and latitudes. I have my problems with this aspect of the story.
I do too.
Yeah.
And I'm just hearing it. I haven't actually heard this before. I've heard about the sighting. I've heard the witness reports, but I've never heard this, they put a message in my head thing.
Oh, yes. And in fact, if you Google allegedly also a binary coded message, which Jim writes in their book, 24 hours later, he remembered all the thousands of ones and zeros. And I'm not being facetious here. I mean, autistic people can hold extraordinary numbers in their head, not that he's autistic, right, but just that the human mind's amazing.
It is.
But that he remembered all of them, wrote them out in 16 pages of notebook paper, got them right, and experts have been working with them. And who am I to say it's wrong? Although, again, I think, with respect, that this is something that was put in his head to create the impression, to create a bit of a shiny object and a sideshow to take the attention away from the more stoic, boring...
All right, well, I hate to ask this, but I'm going to ask it. Is it something that he said on the spot happened, or is this something that he mentioned much later?
We get 2 things on that. Nick, who is the lead writer on the book, says it's a secret he kept for 30 years, but then we learn that he talked about it in hypnotic regression as early as 1994, and John Burroughs says that he never told him about it until October of 1997, which is 29 years and 9 months later.
Yeah, I say this because, look, we're humans. We tend to, when we tell a story again and again, sometimes we embellish some aspect of it because we always feel like we have to, every time we do an interview or write another book, we have to add something special. I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm just saying that's human.
In Jim's defense, I don't think it is the case. I really feel that Jim received some kind of programming. All these guys were messed with. To use Charles Halt's term, they were all worked over in terms of stuff put in their heads after they were witnesses. What was done to them was unconscionable, frankly. And I think Jim was made to believe that this had happened. And I think it was a contingency plan. There are probably many in place for taking attention away off of, gosh, if we ever have a really full-scale UFO military situation, we've got to have things that will effuse it, confuse it, stir the pot. Again, sort of the equivalent of your Kim Kardashian or your, a shiny object to take your attention away from the more hardcore, actual physical evidence, the credible witness accounts supporting each other, etc., the kind of evidence you could bring into a court rather than a very and again, who am I to say? But this is the key event on the first night, that Penniston and Burroughs have a genuine, absolutely real, I have no doubt, encounter with a machine of undetermined origin, under intelligent control, missing time, memory lapses.
Was this craft picked up by radar? I mean, it's coming down in a very military-type place, right? Well,
that is a great question.
Thank you.
We understand that, first, remember this is 3 separate nights with different things happening on each night involving different base personnel and civilians in the area who are also catching parts of this.
Right.
At one point, several, Woodbridge, the nearest town, police officers kind of wander in and out of the scene.
Right.
So it's a bit of a chessboard here. And yes, there are radar reports confirmed from this period of time from a number of military and civilian radar operators in the area.
Good. Glad to hear you've got that now. You said that it landed. There were impressions in the ground. You haven't told me much other than what apparently was a sort of a mind wipe, except for what they downloaded to him. So how much witness testimony is there on the ground of, oh my God, I saw it?
Well, number one, you've got John and Jim. You've got Ed Kavanasak, who was watching it from a distance. The lights were seen in the sky. Again, this one, we have the impressions in the soil. We have elevated beta and gamma radiation counts, even though it's so minuscule.
Yeah. Right.
It's like 10 times the amount in the surrounding area.
Right.
The area is studied very carefully the next day. The second night, one of the main things that happens is one of the few female personnel, a sergeant named Bonnie Tamplin. It's temperate night, even though it's December. Window rolled down in a military vehicle, and I guess a variation on what we would call an orb flies into the cab. And she has a big problem with it. It shakes her up tremendously. She's taken off active duty. Lights are seen in the sky. But moving into the third night, we have, I guess, depending on your point of view, the two main events. Earlier on the third night, remember this is between Christmas and New Year's, there are parties going on off base, especially for the officers, and a Captain Bruce England, who is associated with the Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles I. Halt, approaches Mr. Halt at a party, and he says they're back. Halt, who had been skeptical but open to Penniston and Burroughs' account, decides to leave the party, gets into his field clothes, pulled together a contingent of, I believe, 6 individuals. They head out into the forest with night scope and other equipment, and at a certain point, and Mr. Halt, Colonel Halt at the time, has a microcassette recorder, which of course in 80 was like state of the art. And if anything's going to happen, he wants to record it. And indeed, it's now probably one of the best known audio clips in the realm of, texture for UFO documentaries, radio show openings and closings. And what happens is he and his men observe an unknown coming in directly over them. It was first played in early 1985 in then the fledgling 24-hour news station CNN's very first 3 special reports. They've now done who knows how many hundreds. But Ted Turner, who, of course, owned it, he authorized Chuck DeCaro, a great tech and military reporter who you may be aware had quite a brush with death earlier this year. He and his wife were accosted, and he had to kill the guy who was attacking him. Chuck is one of the best newsmen I've ever met, and he is recovering, but he was badly injured.
Anyway, he was dispatched? He was dispatched, the Rendlesham.
The bad guy was. Oh, no, Chuck.
No. I know the bad guy was dispatched.
Chuck was authorized to do what amounted to a mini documentary for CNN.
Okay,
that
all right.
aired
Hold
in
it
early
right
85.
there. Hold it right
the
there.
The only reason I bring it up is because that's where the tape.
All right. Peter, people feel very strongly about this. Don't they?
And,
yes.
Again, I've given you a capsule of the most important aspect of the first night. John Burroughs and Jim Penniston are your best guests for that.
Okay.
Second night transpires, and on the third night again, the deputy base commander.
When you say third night, do you mean they landed every night?
Well, they either passed over, landed, were observed in the area, picked up on radar on 3 consecutive nights right between Christmas and New Year's. Yeah.
All right.
There were other episodes in this part of England. It's a very loaded piece of real estate with quite a history, and they've continued. But these series of events form the Rendlesham Forest Incident.
All right, before we go any further, Peter, we've got a bunch of photographs, I believe, at artbell.com that we put up for you tonight. What is up there? There's some shockers?
I sent over a bunch of photographs to your amazing producer, Redacted, and I'm not sure which ones you're referring to.
No, I'm asking you, are there shockers in those photos?
Oh, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of new evidence, which we'll get to shortly,
yes,
one remarkable series of photographs which do constitute genuine new evidence for sure.
Okay, well, that's really big stuff. So people will be going to the website, artbell.com. When they get there, what are they looking for?
Well, we have a number of documents up. We have a series of photographs that, might as well do it now.
Yes,
my co-author, Larry Warren, a great guy who has been a dear friend of mine through the course of now 28 years. And we don't have anybody in terms of being a whistleblower, standing up for what's right, taking a tremendous amount of heat for 35 years, and a lot of that on his own before other witnesses came forward. To cut to the chase, on the morning of the event that he was involved in, which was the second event on the third night, he had picked up a new Instamatic camera. And, 110 film, some of your listeners may be too young to know about analog photography. But in the old days, we would buy a roll of chemical film, and you'd run it through a camera to see how it worked. And he was doing that day. And at a certain point, they were heading back to base. He and some guys had been into Ipswich, the nearest small city. And they stopped, and he took a snapshot of an A-10 fighter aircraft landing in the distance.
Right.
It is a really pretty mundane snapshot. And I had seen it, more than a quarter century ago among many dozens of pictures he took at that time. And Larry, over the time that we've been on Facebook, as we are, every couple of weeks or month or two, he'd post a bunch of service-related snapshots. Well, last August, he posted this picture art. And one of our buddies in England pointed out, could have been a crack in the emulsion or dust on the original photo, that there was a dot in the sky above the A-10. And another friend of ours, Robert Martins, blew it up, quite a bit of optical knowledge, and what he saw in the enlargement absolutely made my jaw drop. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. For decades, Larry has described the craft that he and the men with him faced on the ground in a farmer's field called Capel Green in the Rendlesham Forest on the third night. And there's a very particular aspect of the configuration. If you do what you do or what I do, you have hundreds and hundreds of people giving you, this is what the craft looked like kind of reports over the years, and most of them don't stick in your mind. But there was a structural detail where on the bottom, at each edge, it kind of hooked around. It was just sort of an elegant little detail. And he did his first drawing of it in 1982. In fact, in the home of Betty Andreasen. It ended up in the biggest tabloid in the world the following year when the story broke. And he did kind of a magic marker type drawing in 85. And he also did a drawing as if you were in the air looking down on the scene in Capel Green that showed part of that detail. Anyway, the thing in the sky above this A-10 aircraft.
I see it now. I'll be damned. All right, it is there, folks. It's you can see the A-10.
Yeah.
And then you can see what appears to be a dot. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, if you blow this up as he has, what now, you have...
the go-to guy on this for the past 30-odd years has been Bruce Maccabee, optical physicist, the absolutely most respected photo analyst in the history of UFO studies.
I'll be darned.
Retired now, writing books.
All right, let me tell everybody how to get there. When you go to my website, listen to me. When you go to my website, folks, artbell.com, right up at the top, you'll see a picture of Peter Robbins, who looks like some kind of Chicago mobster, actually.
Thank you.
Click on that, and then you'll get to these other photographs. Man, oh man, look at that, above that A10. So if you want to see it start now. Okay, go ahead, Peter.
Again, we don't have the negative. It may turn up someday. You know how these things are. But Bruce said, whatever it is, it's a real it's up there. This is, you know, in the old days, if you tried to fake something, it wasn't the elegant details with Photoshop. The first thing we'd look for with a 10-power magnifying glass was the cutout edge of the paper where it had been glued down on the photograph. I mean, it was pretty rudimentary stuff. Whatever it is, it's the real deal. And then again, our friend Robert Martins in England did this graphic schematic accounting for distortion in the air and things. You see the drawings Larry did. You see the schematics. You see the shape of it. And you know, this is not your standard UFO. And the last thing I include was a screen grab from March of something that looks like it came out of the same factory up on Alpha Centauri or wherever over Wisconsin, just, 6 months ago or whenever. This, for me, was just a reminder that real evidence, this is not a time-sensitive matter. Recently, I had the last bit of the original soil that I had taken from the site of Larry's event and had it, I sent it back to the original chemist who had done the work, who is a very distinguished scientist. I'm glad I still stay in touch with him. I'm going to see him this weekend at a big conference called Experiencers Speak in Portland, Maine. And Matthew Moniz, just when he got the old samples...
I'm sorry, Peter, I got to do it to you again. Here's Duncan, who's wormholing through from New Zealand, who says, Rendlesham is compelling. I work in IT, and one part of the case that I would question is anybody's ability to not only recall binary code, but recall it in such accuracy that it would result in the message that was revealed. It's verging on the Vegas level of chance. Any comment on that, Peter?
Only spot on. I couldn't agree with them more. This is a big problem for me, and the way I've trained myself to investigate, and the people I've worked with, dear Bud Hopkins, who was my friend for 35 years and who I worked as his assistant for about half that time, a great no-nonsense New York City police officer named Pete Mazzola, who is also a very great role model for me. You begin with the most mundane everyday explanation, and you investigate it fully. If it doesn't pan out, you go on to the next. And after a while, you may have something interesting. It's not as sexy, it's not as romantic or exciting, but I have a lot of... I just don't believe it, that it was time travelers from the future. It seems tremendously more logical to me that this is what was put in Jem's head. Other things were put in other people's heads.
Okay, here's the problem, Peter. Here's the problem. If you were in a courtroom and you were on trial for murder, your attorney, if he could manage to take the cop who was testifying against you and prove that cop lied once,
yes,
then he can make the argument successfully to the jury that the whole thing is not worth validating. It's baloney because he lied.
Yeah.
Lie once, lie twice, lie 3 times. I'm not saying he lied. I'm just saying if you don't believe it, then you can make that extension.
Yeah. I don't believe he's lying. I believe on a very deep level, although, as Nick writes in the book, in public he's adamant about this, but he has his doubts in private. He should have his doubts in private. It's totally untenable, and it's another thing that I do not like about that book, that Nick goes to great lengths to explain it in any number of ways, but never once even pays lip service to the possibility that this is, an implanted thought and part of a programming operation to take attention away from the serious evidence that, again, isn't quite as sexy or tabloid-oriented or potentially sensational. It's also taking the attention of a lot of people who are caught up on almost, time travel this and time travel that.
Sure.
A lovely topic, fascinating, do shows on it, but let's stay focused on what we have in way with real evidence.
And I'm not saying that something could not have been implanted that he would be made to remember.
Exactly. It happens all the time. And
sure.
the history of mind control, brainwashing, or just implanting subtle thoughts. So for me, part of what happened to these guys is certain things were put into their heads to confuse their actual memories, so that when they started to talk about them, they would be perceived as a crackpot, somebody who was a bit unhinged, somebody with mental problems. And part of that has really helped cast doubt on otherwise extraordinarily well-documented military testimony of so many of these guys.
That's right. No, it's a very well-documented story. Well. It's a very well-documented story.
Yeah.
So I think it's every bit as big as Roswell, and I think that some of what you have brought us tonight is very important. Some people are going to love these photographs. My goodness.
Well, you have to thank Larry Warren for that, and our friends in England, Mick Sayer and Robert Martins, for Mick for discovering it, and Robert for laying it out schematically for us. But it's a wonderful thing to remember about evidence. In certain areas, it's frozen in time. If you can unearth it, it's as fresh, important, and supportive of your case as anything you can find at the moment that the thing happens.
All right, so I want to thank you for breaking it here tonight. I mean, that's just wonderful that you would bring it to us. I take it that people in the UFO community in general have had a sneak peek at what you're dropping on us tonight, right?
No, they haven't.
Really?
And I have a small circle of friends that I've been talking to in this manic 5 weeks that I have been working nonstop, investigating, researching, fact-checking, lining up my documents. I've been in that place that writers dream of. At the same time, I wish to all that's holy that it would have been any other subject. This has not been a pleasant period of time for me, and although, hey, it's great to be back on your show, Art. It's great to be back in contact with you. I hope I'm invited back as a guest again. But this is not a fun night for me. It is a very important night in terms of what we're going to be discussing, but it's not pleasant. It's not nice. It's simply the truth. And I discussed this a little bit with a colleague on a small radio show the middle of August in Glasgow, so it didn't really get out there. I have only shared the working manuscript with a handful of people, including you, and I'm now working with my editor and publisher to tighten it up. And what we're going to talk about tonight is kind of rough stuff, but we didn't get in this business.
No, I'm set for rough stuff. When you say rough stuff, you mean?
I mean, naming names, saying things about people that are not nice, just true, documenting everything I say.
Well, all right. Why do we need to do that? I mean, why do we? Okay, lay it out.
Why do we need to?
Yes, why?
Well, I guess because it's an important truth for me, certainly, as somebody that's been involved on and off, but to a great degree in work on this particular case for 28 years. And,
all right, let's cut to the chase. You're in some kind of tangle with Pope, right, Nick Pope?
Oh, it's minor compared to this. Nick, last year in his book, which really is his book, John and Jim, are the secondary authors, even though it's their story. And the book is called Encounter in the Rendlesham Forest.
Yes.
In it, Nick, who had been a good friend, and I will always wish him well personally, but he pulled something that I found pretty abhorrent. Namely, he weaves a thread of information throughout the book that I was able to, it jumped out at me because I co-wrote the book that he was addressing in his derogatory comments.
All right, what derogatory in what manner, please?
Well, if you have read the book that Larry Warren and I read, there's, like any book, a nonfiction book, there's certain information that's only available in that book. At about a dozen times in his book, he makes reference to that information with reference to my co-author, Larry Warren, but he does not supply the proof that we have to back it up, he makes Larry appear like kind of a lone wolf who has no one to back him up. He consciously leaves out the evidence that would negate his allegation, and all in sort of a poor Larry, we know he's a troubled fellow and he's a loner kind of sensibility, which I really resented. And what I was able to do was establish that he had the information, and in each case chose to either exclude it or distort it in a manner that, again, was deliberately deceptive. It really formed a pattern where everything that touched on our book, which was credited once, but cited 10 or 12 times. And Nick says that, no, it's all of the credits are in there, but they're not. For example, regarding the suicide of a man after this event, Nick refers to it as a rumor that nobody could back up. Well, Larry was one of the first two responders on the scene where this young man had blown his head off. And it kind of radicalized my co-author, to put it mildly. He knew this kid. He had had a great deal of trouble in the debriefing. And the person who picked up on it and kind of championed trying to get to the bottom of it was not Nick. Well, certainly he wasn't in the MOD at the time. But the deputy base commander, Charles I. Halt, dismisses it. But in fact, a former chief of staff of the Ministry of Defense, a legendary guy named Admiral Lord Peter Hill Norton, a tough son of a gun who thought most everybody in UFOs were bollocks, unless you were okay with Timothy Good, because Timothy Good, ace writer and researcher on UFOs in the UK, he not only respected, but he wrote the foreword to his, I guess, most popular and influential book, Above Top Secret. And Larry and I met with Hill Norton. He took Larry's case very seriously. It was Larry who broke the story to Hill Norton, again, a former chief of staff of the Ministry of Defense, that in 1980 we had nuclear ordnance at RAF Bentwaters. He was not aware of it and went on to confirm it and went ballistic. And this is sort of dismissed in their book. Nick is fair in asking us to consider Larry's feelings. At one point he discusses an allegation that is very true, and he says Larry's a lone witness, completely ignoring the fact that we have testimony from two other Air Force witnesses in the book that back up Larry's confirmation of what he saw. This is dirty pool, and it is intentional, and it's a shame because, again, as a person, I like Nick Pope. We were good friends for many years. I can only guess at why he decided to do this.
And your guess is what?
Well, I think, again, starting with the most mundane, in a way, he is a career man in the MOD. He loves his country. He is loyal to his government. He is a loyal servant of the Queen of England, if that's the right terminology. I mean, he takes it seriously, and I'm not being facetious here at all. I respect him for it. And in 1997, when our book came out in its first edition, it was June of 97. America, UK went UFO crazy. Nick's first book was coming out that same summer. We stayed at his house guests. He helped us actively to promote our book, even though it was competing with his book, because he believed in it that much. And what ultimately happened is our book went to the top 10 bestseller list, and I'm proud to say for several, well, either a month or so, we were several points ahead of John le Carré's newest novel, which was very surreal to me. But I think over the years that passed, Nick regretted giving us that help, because when that book became popular, this minor scandal broke around the American nuclear treaty violation with the United Kingdom. And that's the most mundane.
So then this comes down to what, in your view? Jealousy?
No, that he helped us.
Yeah, I got that.
Right.
And then apparently was
that embarrassed his government.
Then was sorry that he helped you?
Well, I think in retrospect he definitely was, because it was an embarrassment to Her Majesty's government and to the Ministry of Defense. And the one quote that I'd like to read tonight, and will take all of 20 seconds, is from the back of our first edition, so you and your listeners can understand how he felt about our book when it came out.
Go ahead.
This book is dynamite. Larry Warren and Peter Robbins have done an excellent job in blowing the lid off a UFO case that could be bigger and more sinister than Roswell. There is much in this book that will make you angry, and rightly so. It raises serious questions about just how far certain people will go to prevent the truth about UFOs ever becoming public. The book is meticulously researched, gripping, provocative, and will undoubtedly lead to some long overdue questions being asked at the highest levels. This is a sensational book, and no matter what the skeptics and debunkers may say, this story is not going away. Nick Pope, Ministry of Defense. Things change.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right, so...
If we amp it up, though, maybe he was asked, maybe he was ordered. I don't know. You know, he's retired from the Ministry of Defense, but let's not be naive here. There are certain positions and organizations that you never fully leave. You're an asset in place, a member of the Old Boys Network, a friend of the family, you know, and you can be called upon for favors. I don't know. I'd settle for the most regulation thing, and I'm sorry that he felt compelled to do it, because it shattered a really...
Well, obviously you're hurt. Do you want a debate with him over this?
Oh, yes, I'd love to.
You would.
But he's turned down 10 opportunities so far. He won't face me simply because I went to a great deal of trouble to establish in each case evidence that proves, I think, for any rational reader of deliberate deception, especially if they compare it to their reading of Encounter in the Rendlesham Forest, that he really has no defense, and it's embarrassing.
All right.
I'd love to be a guest.
All right. I want to, if Nick will agree to it, I'd love to do it. But Here's the thing that I want to lay on you, and you can go ahead and comment.
Yep.
Ufology has a lot of problems of the kind we're talking about right here.
Yeah, I don't call myself a ufologist.
With people whatever you call yourself, I don't care.
Investigative writer.
That's fine. All right. But among people with interest in ufology.
Yeah.
How's that? Lots and lots of friction, like we're hearing described tonight.
Yeah.
And it doesn't lead anywhere good. It ends up damaging everything. Now, Rendlesham is absolutely one of the most important cases we could even talk about.
There's no case more important that the research community has to work with. Absolutely true.
So you're sort of damaging things when you do this, right?
Yes and no. For anybody that knows me, and you've got people in your audience that know me.
I'm sure. Yes.
I am an almost pathologically nice person. I care about people. I've got a lot of friends who are well-known colleagues. I go out of my way to nurture those friendships, and I'll tell you the truth. They're a lot more important to me than what I'll laughingly call my career in UFO studies. However, I have a pretty strict code that I go by, and it has to do with telling the truth. We all make mistakes, but when you go out of your way to distort, to lie about, to completely twist the facts in a manner that I feel crosses an ethical line and misleads people and sometimes hurts people, you know what? The truth is more important than why can't we all get along in kumbaya? And let's face it, the outside world is looking at grown-ups that devote their lives to the study of UFOs and other things like that as one step away from being, kind of sideshow entertainment. My goodness, they actually believe in this stuff and all. And we're all supposed to present a common front, look nice on TV, speak properly, present ourselves accordingly. I do. However, I think, and it makes me a bit wistful and unhappy because I've had to do it again very recently. I'm probably going to develop a reputation as somebody who's a bit of a troublemaker when I just want to get back to the work that I was doing, which is fascinating and not attacking anybody, because it doesn't have to do with people completely going out of their way to deceive, to attack, to demean, and to disinform. And basically, the second half of our show tonight, this is the topic that we have to tackle, and I frankly wish it was any other way, but I'm not going to avoid it.
Well, I don't know how much further you've got to go than you've gone.
Oh, we haven't even started yet, Art.
Really?
Yeah.
That serious, huh?
Yes, sir.
Boy, I wish Nick was here.
Oh, it doesn't have to do with Nick.
No?
Not really. No, it has to do with somebody else. And it is the main reason that, we can go on and talk about other aspects of Rendlesham or the state of UFO studies, but I have an important story. Yeah, essentially, as in many major cases, there are disagreements. Colleagues come at it with different theories, agendas, what have you.
Okay.
But there are certain things that we can all agree are factual if they can establish themselves. And for me, I think in terms of courtroom quality evidence, obviously in esoteric studies, we don't always have that luxury. Mm-hmm. But last month, something happened that did set me off, and I had a lot better things to do with my time, but life sometimes puts you in a spot where you've got to take an action that you'd rather not.
Okay, what was it?
Last month, the former deputy base commander of RAF Bentwaters, a now retired United States Army colonel named Charles Halt, gave a talk in Woodbridge, Suffolk, England, which is the town closest to where all these events happened.
Right.
And he had been invited back to speak about his experiences, and tickets were sold, and I was coming back the day that he spoke, which was on the 11th of July. I had just flown back to New York City from Roswell, where I had been for a week. And I had business there, so I didn't get to really look at the video of his presentation until about the 14th of the month. And to say it distressed me would be an understatement.
It distressed you, why?
Well, the first, I guess it was 2 hours or so, all the first part was what I would have hoped it would have been. You've got an officer, a commanding officer, who was not only involved in a command position, deputy base commander of a major air base at the time of an extraordinarily important UFO incursion, but got caught up as a witness as well, an actual eyewitness, has actually made statements once he had stepped out of the service that whatever he and his men saw that night was not made by any government on earth. How can you not applaud somebody like that? He has become part of what we'll call our UFO research community. He speaks at conferences. He's been on documentaries, television, and radio show. Very good. You should be aware that his name comes up, I think, about 50 times in Left at East Gate, and never is anything ever said disrespectful or condescending or mean-spirited, or certainly, as far as I'm concerned, inaccurate.
Okay, so what did Charles say that is so bad?
Yeah. For the last half hour of his talk, he simply switched gears and he directed every comment, dozens and dozens of data points, at my co-author Larry Warren, at who is the whistleblower, who is the person that broke this case wide open, made the situation happen, that it went totally worldwide in October of 1983.
Comments
and anybody
of what,
can bear that out.
Right, comments of what nature?
Well, I can spend the rest of the show literally going over them point by point. My point is that when I listened to it, being very familiar with the book that I co-wrote, and at points he says on page 67 of Left at East Gate, or Warren said this, but in fact it was this, I recognized something that not only shocked me, but threw me for a loop, and I felt I had to document it, which was, and let me just say one thing here. I'm sure at the beginning of your show you have a disclaimer that, the The views of your speakers are not those of the broadcast company or Art Bell and Company,
No, we
whatever.
don't have anything like that.
I'm just going to repeat that right now so everybody knows, because if anybody's going to get in trouble here, it's going to be me. What I'm about to say is purely my view based on extremely substantial evidence that I've spent some...
Well, look, at this point, you're all public people anyway. So
Yeah.
What's the deal?
Well, the deal is that if he said 40 things relative to Larry Warren, the book, and myself, 37 of them, and I'm, cutting an abstract here, were completely untrue. He stood on that stage and he told those people in that audience one thing after another that was not true.
All right, let us at least understand a couple of points, specific things that you're talking about that were said in the book that he said were untrue. I want to understand something important in that category for this to even be worth it.
So you want me to start to cite the examples?
No. I want you to take the most egregious examples and give us an idea of what you're talking about. Yes.
Sure. I'm quoting here when I give the statement because I don't want to paraphrase what he says. The sound quality wasn't great, but these are the statements, and then my back response to it. Referring to Larry, he was unsuitable. He was literally booted out.
Unsuitable?
And in fact,
unsuitable in what way?
Well, exactly. Charles Halt wants you to think that he was literally booted out of the Air Force as unsuitable. In fact, not only was he not unsuitable, but he received a 3910 discharge, which means that the Air Force has broken its contract with the individual and is at fault, and so that individual has the right to leave the Air Force with 100% honorable discharge with no blemish against their name because the Air Force screwed up. I can tell you how that happened and what happened, but also would the Air Force have taken a gentleman, a security specialist who was undesirable and unsuitable, and 3 weeks after the event, make him part of a very small, highly select contingent that was flown to West Germany to meet the American hostages returning from Iran and supply them security, and also keep it absolutely top secret, because as you may remember, it was crucially important to the incoming Reagan government that that news be released immediately as the president was sworn in.
That's right.
In March, that same 3 months after the event, he was chosen to be honor guard for Wing Commander Gordon Williams' testimonial, secure general officers' parking, be part of his security detail, and his driver. Also, while he was in the 81st Tactical Security Corps, they received a group commendation. In no way was he unsuitable or undesirable. That's what this man wants you to think. I'd call that egregious. Moving on. Here he says, for those of you who have read Left at Eastgate, I'd like to give you some updates and some potential corrections that Mr. Warren and his co-author can put in their book. If you go to page 39, he said the base was on alert. The base was not on alert. We were at a party, a social event. There was no alert. Well, Charles Halt and some of the officers may have been at a party, and that's very nice. It was between Christmas and New Year's. But if you go to the international news section or the front page of any major American newspaper or European one, you will see what the crisis was, and it was major. The Soviets had massed a huge number of troops on their border with Poland because of the pro-democracy movement that was emanating out of the Gdansk shipyards. The fighter aircraft, the A-10s, the 48 A-10s that were stationed at RAF Bentwaters weren't there, Art. They were in West Germany at forward operating locations because if the Soviets rolled over that border, we were in a shooting war. There was a tremendous alert going on at those bases all over England and all over Europe. The fact that he was at a party does not matter. If you go to page 42, and this is Charles Halt's words, he claims, Larry, that we had his captain at the motor pool. There were no captains at the motor pool. There were two security police captains, something and Verano. Guess where they were at? They were at the party. Well, they were at the party, but after he left the party, they left the party. And this is a quote from a letter that was sent to us after he read the book by Captain Mike Verano. Quote,
all right. Peter.
I was at the motor pool.
Yeah. Peter, this seems to me to be a dispute between the two of you, and I don't know whether it's of much interest to my audience or not for you to get on the air and fire back at somebody.
Fair enough.
What's the point?
All I'm saying is that
I understand discussing Rendlesham, but to just get on here and have a dogfight, what's the point?
Well,
especially when the other dog's not here to fight.
Fair enough, and I'd be happy to go on to other topics and return to this show with Colonel Halt. Except that every point that I'm making here, it's not a dispute, Art.
Yes, it is.
Well, it is, but it's based on my being able to establish that he was not truthful and that we've been able to establish in every case that Larry was.
For example, in his case, and or your case right now, saying it does not make it so, or at least, you can't prove it to me.
Fair enough. That's why I'm publishing around it in about a week and a half, and just wanted to let your listeners know that this was going to be fully documented in written form.
Fine. Well, if you want a forum to get together and go at it with Halt, or whoever you want to go at it with, fine. But I just don't see that you're gaining anything by doing this on the air right now.
Well,
really,
fair
I
enough
don't.
Then, and I'd be honored to return to the show with Halt, Mr. Halt, and with Nick Pope. I think you're going to find that they will both demur and not want to do this on the air or any other place.
Well, let's find out.
Yes, by all means.
What the listeners think about this, and whether they think it's a good idea, whether it's productive, or whether it's just going to harm everything that's already harmed enough, frankly, in this whole area. So what I would like to do is invite you all to call. Maybe it's not hitting you the way it's hitting me, but I think I've described, frankly, how it's hitting me. So anybody willing to call, willing to discuss this, let's do it. It is controversial. It's here's our number, area code 952-225-5278. I want to know how this is hitting all of you. Again, area 952-225-5278, and of course the Skypes, North America at MITD51, and outside of North America, the rest of the world, at MITD55. And again, here is Peter Robbins. I'm sorry, Peter, but the way I read it is I feel used, kind of like you're using me to just sort of blast away here, and I don't like it.
I appreciate that, and I'm sorry you feel that way, Art. Look, it's your show, and it's my first time back as a guest, but
yeah. All right, hold on. I'm going to take some calls. I mean, let's see how the audience feels about it. Amy on Skype, you're on the air.
Sure. Hi, Art. Thanks for having me again on the show.
Okay, back off a little bit. You're very loud, Amy. Back away a little bit.
Sorry
about
that. I just wanted to know how this dispute is so critical to the suggestion that Rendlesham could be bigger than the Roswell incident.
Okay.
It's a great question. I think the main thing that we're dealing with here is the seminal event that set the whole modern age of UFOs into motion. And I take Roswell very seriously. I have a lot of respect for the folks that have done the work on it. I was a consultant to the city for 2 years.
All this, but don't you feel that this dispute, airing it like this, just does the whole Rendlesham thing damage?
No, but I would respect the fact that if other people do, then we should turn our remaining attention to other things.
Well, I mean, if you're arguing over the facts of the case...
No, I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you there. These are not arguing over the facts of the case.
It's he said, she said.
Over presenting information to an audience that's simply not true, repeatedly.
Well, okay, but saying that and then just getting into a dogfight over it, that does compromise the case itself. I mean,
I don't think so. I think it compromises the human beings that are involved in points of view on the case.
Caller, what do you think?
Well, I just want to know how it could be bigger than the Roswell incident. That's all I want to know.
To finish the thought.
All right. Go ahead. Answer that question, why don't you, Peter? How could it be bigger than Roswell?
Well, it's not bigger than the crash that set everything off. What it is it's 34 and a half years old rather than 68 years old. Almost all of the principals are alive, are there to be questioned, to give testimony. The evidence is multiple. It's not, I think we're comparing apples and oranges here. One is the seminal case in UFO history. The other one is the most active, important one we have to work with today that has parts of everything that we look for in a UFO investigation in one case, with credible witnesses, lots of actual scientific and documentary evidence. But, it's not a contest who's bigger.
Okay, all right. That answers it. Hello there on the phone. You're on the air with Peter Robbins.
Hey, this is Tom from Florida. Yeah, I think personally it's more important to discuss the actual event for people who aren't aware of it as much as others than to just talk about two different sides arguing about the subject. Because, it does sound like it's a very significant event. It's very interesting. Personally, I think there's two possibilities that I don't think throwing out the whole time travel aspect is a good idea, because it's a very interesting one. And the other one could be maybe it was a secret military test to see how the base would react to an occurrence of that type.
Interesting. You can't rule that out, or can you, Peter?
Well, who are any of us to say what is or isn't when it comes down to it? For me, these are entry-level questions. They've been batted around for decades now.
Entry-level?
Well, in that, for those folks that have been looking at this case, examining it, reading about it, visiting the area, networking with other people, these things have all come up. For most people, the way to really begin to appreciate the depth of this case is to begin to read the available literature on it. There are a number of great documentaries on it. You can visit the area itself. If you download the free book that I put online last year, it has over 300 pages of data. Military documents, letters, memos, maps. You can become something of an authority and examine that data for yourself.
All right.
Come to your best judgment.
All right. Next on the phone, you're on the air.
Oh, hello. Is this Art Bell?
It is. Hi.
Wow. You're not a mirage. You actually are the real thing, emerging from the desert.
Yes, you're right. I'm the real thing.
Well, I guess because I'm one of those people who are not familiar with this event. And very quickly, Mr. Robbins, you mentioned that Larry Warren is a whistleblower. And
yes.
If he is a whistleblower, what did he state or do or say that would cause such consternation amongst the military?
That's a great question. And I apologize to everybody who is not familiar with this. What I should do is, now that folks know that I have an issue with this and that I will be responding to it in print, we'll be out in a week or so. I'll send you folks the link and you can put it online and read it for yourself. Yeah, let's take these questions. Larry Warren was a security police officer involved on the third night who decided that what was not even the event itself, but what these men were put through after the fact to frighten them, to keep them quiet, to confuse them, resulted in lifelong post-traumatic stress for many of them. Ask Peniston, ask Burroughs, ask Adrian Bustinza, who's going to be doing an interview for the first time ever on radio the night after this. Larry decided that when he left the service, suffering angry, anomalous health problems, that he had to find a way to make it public. And he left with an honorable discharge. And then in late 1982, he met a couple who introduced him to, and I'm sure you remember this name, Art, Larry Fawcett.
Yes.
Larry was a Connecticut State police officer who was also a UFO investigator, and he partnered up on an important book called Clear Intent, which was one of the first books to talk about the cover-up, and was actually the first book in print with something on the Rendlesham event. The first book on Rendlesham came out within a month or so in England called Sky Crash. Well, Larry Warren did an extensive series of interviews with Larry Fawcett. And Fawcett and his writing partner, Barry Greenwood, a ufologist and archivist, put that information into the form of a Freedom of Information Act action. That FOIA resulted in the release of a single-page document on Air Force stationery. Even though it minimized the events, it redacted it, it made it in 2 days into 3, written 2 weeks after the fact, for many years until the Ministry of Defense started to release information on it. That was the only piece of paper officially confirming the event, and it was written and signed by the Deputy Base Commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. That paper found its way to England, and on October 2nd, 1982, it exploded on the front page of the biggest tabloid in the world, with Halt's name all over it.
Right.
Larry also, but under a pseudonym, and that hurt his career tremendously. And Warren, my co-author, is the man who is responsible for getting this story out. That's how he
there you have
became the whistleblower.
Yes, the whistleblower. Does that help you, caller? Or did it confuse you?
Well, I guess I'm going to parrot something someone said earlier about, are we looking back at ourselves with this event occurring? And Mr. Robbins, you were saying some people were abused or manipulated mentally or emotionally, and
yes.
I'm just curious as to is this why this would occur in the first place? And I think I'm thinking about this, Art, because you had a guest on earlier, a different show, but basically he was able to communicate. He was able to communicate past the speed of light. Do you recall this show, Art, with using DNA and?
Well, I recall, yes, a guest talking about DNA in technology not yet developed.
Right,
yes.
and you started that show about talking about quantum mechanics or quantum physics. Right. These are theories, and it's fascinating, but it's actually mind-blowing at the same time, right?
Right.
Okay, so kind of just summing that up very, very basically, but I'm thinking if we're communicating already or have the potential to communicate differently as we have up to this point, other than using radio waves, and we're having visitors from other universes visiting us, I'm kind of confused in the sense of, are we communicating already, or are we? This is where it just blows my mind, where we're trying so hard over decades and decades to communicate to see what's out there, yet we're being visited by beings that are not like us. Or are we looking back at ourselves already, that they're already here? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Not really.
Me neither.
Darn it.
But you said it with conviction. So I'm not exactly sure what she said. I do understand that people thinking about all this can kind of get confused and get off base. And again, not going to love so much what's coming up. I get messages on computer as I do the program. Peter, I'm going to read you one screen of my latest messages right now, okay?
Sure.
Here they come. From Chuck. You're right, Art. Your guest is being argumentative, sounds like a crybaby, and it gives him a weak defensive tone, not good. Hope you can stick to the subject for the rest of the show. From Andrew, Art, glad you feel the same way. Sent a message earlier on here, then you expressed the same feelings on the air a few minutes later. I was excited for a classic UFO landing discussion, but what we got used for is his petty fight. thanks for speaking up. Or from Jocko in New York City. Art, sounds like this guy's going to cry. What a baby. Totally discredits himself. Let the accused, which isn't him, defend themselves. Or D, initial only. Hey, Art, I got to say it for old time's sake. This guest, bonk. Mary, I hate to be negative, but this guy seems like a whining, pretentious fop. Scott in Andover. Well, I'm enjoying the show tonight. I don't feel a good use of airtime, though, to discuss nitpicking between Lieutenant Colonel Halt and Mr. Robbins. Mark says, I think the dispute being aired right now is not necessarily compelling radio, but it is very illustrative of the noise in this field that muddles the waters so badly. How much is disinformation and how much is ideological headbutting? And finally, Allison, that's where my screen ends at the moment, what I heard was petty, depressing, and unprofessional, or not professional. Let me tell your guest, please tell your guest to air his dirty laundry elsewhere. Most people don't want to hear this kind of thing. Your guest is making the other guy look better. And it kind of probably gets worse from there. What do you think, Peter?
Well, I think I made the wrong decision to take the course that I did on the show, and I'm sorry I've disappointed your listeners.
Well, I think it's just that, a lot of people think it's unfair when the other guy isn't there. That's
I agree. And you should be aware that Larry Warren and I were barred from going to that conference when Charles Halt said all the things about him that were untrue.
How could they bar you?
He stipulated that Larry Warren would not be allowed in the hall if he showed up even with his 20 pounds. And that's a fact that is documented.
So even if that's the cost to get in, 20 pounds, right?
Yes, that's what they charge for.
Well, he should have tested it then, brought his 20 pounds, laid it on the line, and see if they actually barred him.
It was made very clear to us, Art, and you can check that out with Mr. Halt or the conference organizer.
I'm not going to argue with any of this because I can't. Twin Cities, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
The aspect of the story where the person touches the craft or whatever it is and starts receiving this information.
Right.
When were those claims first made?
Well, publicly, they were made on the night of December 28th, 2010, at a small conference we had in Woodbridge, England.
And this was how long after the incident?
30 years almost to the day.
30 years.
Well, I have some criticism of that then because
Me too.
There was a very popular video game that came out in November of 2007, which a plot point has basically that exact same scenario playing out.
Well, maybe you think it was stolen from a video game.
Quite possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
basically exactly the same thing. An alien artifact, the person touches it, and he starts having these visions and basically it sounds basically the exact same thing.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Well,
Thank you.
First of all, Art, you really should have Jim Peniston and John Burroughs on the show. I'm talking, as an outside investigator of not even their case. If that's the case, one thing I do not believe is that Jim created this. I think he's a true victim, and I think he either believes this happened to him or he's so involved and invested in it that it's very difficult to back out now.
Maybe it's really hard to buy into anything that suddenly pops up 30 years later. Skype, Lewis, you're on the air with Peter.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to respond to Mr. Bell's question, then ask a question based on new testimony on Dr. J's show just prior to your show, Mr. Bell.
Didn't hear it, so I can't comment.
I'm a big fan of Peter's, and I agree with him. He's pathologically nice based on my experience. I personally am very interested in Rendlesham, down to the details. I've read every book, and so forth, including Georgina Bruni's book.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to see is Mr. Bell lead a discussion between the parties.
Yes.
And see if that leads to a reconciliation, or that would be the ideal goal, even if it's not.
Well, that's much better idea than a one-sided,
I agree.
Well, Jay,
the
thank
point
you,
being
and
that
I
if
couldn't
they
agree
reconcile
more.
or for whatever
And,
reason,
although
they
hold
can use their energy.
on, hey guys, one at a time. You're both talking.
Okay.
Peter,
Thank you, Jay.
I'm almost done, Peter.
Yeah,
then you could go on and dig out the new or more people who've seen the UFO. I'd like to see more witnesses dug out. And then I have a second question, but your turn, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah. Basically, Charles Halt did what I've been accused of doing. He barred the person that he spent half an hour attacking from entering the room, and was told, Larry was told, I was told if we showed up. I was given dispensation later because I said I'd behave myself if I went. But we were told that, and John Burroughs as well, we would not be allowed in the room.
I understand.
Okay, you don't really know if you don't really know if you're barred until you show up with the money and try.
Well,
my second observation,
we were
Mr.
told.
Robbins,
okay, hold it. You're both doing it again. Hold it. You're both talking.
If we showed up.
Caller, hold on. Peter, finish, please.
Sure. All I'm saying is that I would love to be a part of any forum where I could sit down and discuss these things with Nick Pope, with Colonel Halt. They will not sit down with me, and I'd certainly...
We'll find out. Okay, I'll tell you what, Peter, we'll find out about that. Caller, you had a second
The second
point?
question was, on Dr. J's show, just prior to your show, a congressman was on, and I called in, and the congressman said that there's been a new development, that Sergeant Peniston has reached an agreement with the government, that the government would give Sergeant Peniston his medical records in exchange for Sergeant Peniston shutting up. Now, those are my words.
All right. Now, do you know anything about that? Are you aware of that? No. Okay. Well, let's I don't know. Let's go here. Wherever here is, you're on the air, on the phone. Hi.
Yes, hi. I want to ask a question regarding the UFO, and that Mr. Robbins is not very forthcoming with his information, and that is...
what is he not forthcoming about?
He's trying to cause problems in the community.
Please.
It's very hard to understand.
Okay, well, so are you, though.
What am I doing to cause a problem?
You don't have facts to back up what you say.
Oh, no, I do have facts to back up what I say. Very much so. What specifically
caller, let's
am I
get
not
specific.
backing up for you?
Caller, get specific. What are you talking about exactly?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, he's gone. He's gone.
Okay.
That's all right. We'll just move on because he didn't have anything to back up what he was saying. Hi there. You're on the air.
Art, it's great to hear you back.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
Two things. Number one, great stance last night about your announcement about the radios.
Thank you.
Stations and everything. Shout out to the Art Bell Midnight in the Desert fans on Facebook. We're all talking about you right now.
Right.
Okay, Peter, if I wanted to go this route tonight, I'm disappointed with tonight's show. I would have stayed home with my wife today and watched The Young and the Restless. It's just, you say you're a writer. You've had plenty of time to write this stuff up. Your issues with this guy. You could have gave it to Art. You could have put it on his website and said, "Hey, read this," and could have went on about other things. I'm disappointed.
To me, it does a disservice to the whole. I don't know, the whole field, and it's not the right way to do it. There should be people to dispute this. If these are really important facts,
I'm sorry.
If these are really important facts, then Pope should be here, Halt should be here. We should agree. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a smear fest.
Well, that's what I'm responding to. A smear fest
I understand.
that happened.
Everybody thinks that they're being smeared or misquoted or lied about or whatever. Everybody feels that way, and they've got their own version of the facts.
And what
No,
stinks is it's still being
anyway.
talked about over and over and over. And if you provide those facts online, or like you said, you're a writer or
I
publisher,
came on to
you could
tell
have
you
done
that there will be a book out on this in about a week and a half.
All right,
with
well, then
everything in it. I'm sorry I even said anything more than that.
Okay, then in a week and a half, the truth can be known, right?
Indeed, yes.
That would have been the time to do this, in my opinion, in a week and a half.
You're right. It was a bad judgment call on my part, and we should have done a show on another subject.
We should have. Jason, you're on the air. Hello.
Hi, Art. Great to talk to you. I just wanted to give a shout out before I talk to you about dark matter news being awesome tonight.
Thank you.
Your guest seems to me like a sort of politician of UFOs. Every time somebody brings up a question to him, he sort of steers it to his grudge, and I don't know. I don't think.
Well, that's what he came on tonight to talk about, this grudge. No doubt about it.
And it's just weird radio. It's the weirdest radio I've heard in a long time.
Well, radio is all kinds of things, sometimes weird.
It's awesome. You do it the best.
Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it. And let me move on to the phone. You're on the air with Peter Robbins. Hi.
Hi, Art. Always a pleasure to talk to you, the master of the late night format.
Thank you.
You kept your cool very well. I would not have. Nobody really wants to hear a chicken fight live on the air when there's only one chicken. This Rendlesham Forest incident has been talked about a lot. It's on the internet. It's everywhere. I would have liked to delineate points that are very hard to understand, maybe some facts that are not well known by the public. For example, the binary code that telepathed into his brain, and that was talked about many times. I would like to hear something about that, and I can still hear something about that. What I do not want to hear is any more chicken fights.
Okay.
I've got enough chickens of my own.
All right, so the binary, thank you, caller, the binary code decoded said roughly what, Peter? Hello, Peter.
Once again, you really are talking to the wrong person. All I have is out of the book. It is a series of 6 longitude and latitudes of mystical locations around the world.
Right.
A number of,
but no message to mankind.
Fiction sounding phrases.
No message to mankind.
Coming from the year 8100, I think.
8100. So no message to mankind beyond these locations.
No. Nick Pope theorizes that there may be a message within the message, and that someday the experts will crack it. My feeling is it is what it is, and it's a shiny object that's taking attention away from more serious aspects of the case.
Okay. On the phone, you're on the air. Hi.
Hey, Peter.
Yes.
Peter?
Yes. Listen.
I want to give you the benefit of the doubt. Even if he was smearing you or lying about things, isn't it more beneficial for the UFO community that you said gets little respect anyway if you focus your thoughts and your actions on what you can control, which is your work and the positive impact that you can have?
I have focused my thoughts on my work for 35 years. I have had a positive impact. I will have this ebook coming out within the next week and a half or 2 weeks, and people can come to their own conclusions after they read it.
Well, the problem I have with it's the infighting. It's the constant infighting. That's when everybody's divisive. That's when it tears the whole thing apart.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And there's one thing of infighting and bickering and people disagreeing. It is another thing, and this was my only basic premise, when one person steps into a public forum, bars the other person that they're going to attack, and then spends half an hour and says dozens and dozens of things about them that are untrue, which I will establish in detail with actual court-level evidence in this simple book called Halt in Woodbridge.
Right.
I guess that's all I should have said, and we should have gone on to another topic.
No kidding. Caller?
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like a breakup in high school where one person's telling one side of the story at the event, the other one's telling the other one.
Kind of, yeah. Let's move on. Caller, new caller, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, hi.
Oh. Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Am I on the air?
You certainly are. When you hear that boing sound, that means you're on the air.
I want to stay anonymous. I don't like getting in fights, but I think Peter's a great guy, and I think you're beating a dead horse. You've said enough derogatory things about him. But anyway...
I haven't said anything derogatory. Ma'am, I have simply repeated what people have either written on the Internet or have said here on the air. That's it.
Oh. Well, anyway, I'm glad you're back. I think you're the all-time greatest, and it's just much happier that you're back on the air. But Peter is... I met him, and he's a very honest, sincere man, and I think, he's just trying to bring his truth to the public, and I think, he's really gotten bashed. But I also knew Chuck DeCaro and his early days when he worked in New Orleans, and I know he worked on that Rendlesham documentary.
Yeah.
And then he kind of disappeared. He never did really get into ufology, and I don't blame him because he would be a real fighter. If he did, he wouldn't put up with the foolishness that goes on in the field.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, I know he got recently shot and he had to kill somebody. That's really sad, but he was defending his life.
Yes, he did, and he's doing a lot better, and he is a great guy and a terrific newsman as well.
And is there any way you can get him maybe back involved on the Rendlesham information?
Oh, I wouldn't wish it on my best friend. Let him do whatever he's doing with his life. It really is.
Guys, listen,
I've
I'm
never
sorry.
been so badly attacked for trying to tell the truth as I have been tonight. So
I know, I understand.
Leave him alone.
I'm sorry. There's Rendlesham, there is Roswell, and then there's like everything else. So I guess the main character, the character most in the middle of everything, was John Burroughs. He's here tonight. He was born in Bloomington, Illinois, back in 1960, joined the U.S. Air Force right after high school graduation. Yay, Air Force. Received orders to go to RAF Bentwaters, England, arrived there in 1979, 18 months before the strange encounter in the Rendlesham Forest. That was between RAF Bentwaters and nearby RAF Woodbridge. During that time, John worked as an Air Force police officer, AP actually, says nothing strange ever happened, that is until midnight, December 26th of 1980. Now, John Burroughs' account of Rendlesham has been featured worldwide. It's been on a number of TV and radio networks. On December 26th and 28th of 1980, an account by John as the only witness involved with both nights of the investigation of a craft of unknown origin adjacent to the east gate of RAF Woodbridge. Mr. Burroughs will discuss the pursuit, investigation, findings, and aftermath of the report. This is indeed the military's best documented and most witnessed case in history. It's that simple. So coming up, John Burroughs, and this time we'll welcome to the program John Burroughs.
Thank you, Art.
I was also Air Force, so really happy to have you on the program, John. As I said, and I think I'm right, there's Rendlesham, there's Roswell, and then there's like everything else out there. So this is a monster of a case. I guess I would ask you to take me through it in detail, from your first awareness of it, or where you want to start, and through the entire affair so that everybody understands what really happened.
Sure, I'd be happy to. It started on early in the morning of December 26th. We came on duty at 11 o'clock, 2300 on the 25th, and about 0300 on the morning of the 26th, was his Boxing Day in the UK of 1980. I was riding around with my supervisor, who had met up with me about a half an hour prior, wanted to ride around and talk for a little bit. It was just, Christmas night into Boxing Day morning. As we were driving down to check the East Gate, which is, at the east end of the perimeter of Woodbridge Base, he saw something that he later said it didn't crash, it landed, come down out of the sky, and it appeared to land in the forest.
Okay, so you didn't actually see it land. He did.
Not at the beginning, no.
Okay,
I did
all
not.
right.
I did not see it. And he got my attention, and he told me to look out, out in that direction. I've been there, almost 2 years. He had just gotten there. So I'd been down there at night during alerts and other things, when it was dark like that and everything else. And first thing he wanted to know from me was, well, have you ever seen anything like that before? And, at that point, I could see something in the forest itself. Like it was kind of lit up, white lights. As I just tried to describe over the years, it almost like a Christmas light display, different coloring lighting and everything else that was down in the forest itself. So we went ahead and went down to the gate. He was a very conservative guy. So we kind of...
May I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Was that your boss?
Yeah, he was my boss.
He was your boss,
he
right.
was my supervisor.
What rank were you, John?
I was E3, Airman First Class, and he was an E5 Staff Sergeant.
But I was too, Airman First Class. All right, and he was Staff Sergeant. Okay, got it. Continue.
Right. So we decided, both of us, that there was something that wasn't right out there, but it was off base, and what do we want to do with it? So we came together and decided, well, we'll go down to the end of the road, so we're going to have to leave the base. We opened up the gate, and we drove down to the end of the road before you would turn left to Bentwaters, or right would take you to one of the small towns down the road. So we went ahead and went down to the end of the road. There was a way you could turn the car back around, and he turned it around as such so we were starting to go back towards the road that led up to the gate. Right. I jumped out of the vehicle, and I looked out into the forest. I don't know how to explain it other than it just didn't seem right. All of a sudden it was like we were vulnerable. We were sitting out there off base. The lights were there. At one point it almost looked like this all happened really quickly. Like maybe it was starting to come towards us. There was like a static electricity in the air, and it just didn't seem right. And here we were off the base, hadn't told anybody, and we didn't know what was going to happen next. So I jumped back in the vehicle and we took off back up to the gate, drove as fast as we could back up to the gate, went up, there's a gate shack up there, went up to the gate shack, parked the vehicle, and then we decided we better call it in. So went ahead and got on the phone. The phone went to the law enforcement desk. So I got the desk sergeant on the phone, and I told him that there was something strange just outside the East Gate, at Woodbridge, that was out in the forest, and we can't explain it. We wanted to report it. And it was Christmas night and, to Boxing Day morning. I played practical jokes over the last year on the desk sergeant himself. He kind of didn't want to believe me. And we kind of went back and forth a little bit. Even Sergeant Steffens got on and told him there was something strange going on. And again, I pulled some jokes on him. So he was a little leery to bite for it. So what he did was transfer me to CSC, which is Central Security Control, which was the security side of the house, where they took care of the airplanes and stuff like that. And got the controller on the phone and told him that there was something strange out in the forest. We couldn't explain it. That we wanted to notify, the shift commander of what was going on. So they went ahead and they found him, started talking to him behind the scenes. And at the same time, they notified the security supervisor at Woodbridge, which would have been Sergeant Peniston, that he needed to respond down to the East Gate and to check out what we were dealing with.
At least by now they're buying your story.
Well, right. By that point I kept it going. So they had a funny feeling something was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So went ahead and Sergeant Peniston came down to the gate. When he got down to the gate, he met with Sergeant Steffens, who was the ranking law enforcement guy. He gave him a quick synopsis of what's going on. They could both still see the lights in the forest. They were still there. And
can you describe, John, what from that distance what they looked like? I mean, was it a soft glow you were seeing? Could you see distinct lights, or was it just sort of a blur? I mean, what were your eyes seeing?
It was like, sometimes it was a soft glow, sometimes it was more, the white light would get brighter. And at one point while we were standing at the gate, the white light itself seemed to almost come to the edge of the forest to where the road was. And within the white light, and it even looked a little like orangish or hueish, there was different colored lighting in it, which would have been red, blue, and green. And I always tried early on to describe it. It looked like some kind of Christmas light display. It was strange.
You said when you were close to it that you felt something like an electrostatic charge.
Yes, when we first went down and left the base, when I got out of the vehicle, the hair on the back of my head stood up, and there was like an electric charge, and he could feel it inside the vehicle itself. In other words, immediately it was like, let's get out of here. Let's get back up here and report what's going on.
Yeah, it's a queasy feeling. It really is. It's like lightning about to strike or something high voltage about to happen. Yeah, I know the feeling.
Right.
So back to you go.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
Sergeant Pennison got on the phone. By this time, the wheels were turning. They were starting to make contact because of the fact that Sergeant Steffens reported something up in the sky coming down. They immediately started contacting radar RAPCON, which would have been on the base. This is some of the stuff I found out after the fact. You know, you put the pieces together over the years. But they started reaching out to our base radar, which then they also reached out to Eastern Radar and to even Heathrow. So he gave a description of what was going on. They were able to verify through radar that something was up over in that area over the forest and disappeared on radar. So, and this has always been an interesting point that gets overlooked. It was off base. There was no immediate threat to the base itself.
Okay, well, once again, you're saying they observed it incoming, and they could tell, I don't know how well the radar pins it down, but I mean, that's very close to the radar, so they knew the distance, they knew how close it was to the base?
Right. Colonel Halt over the years has talked to the radar people, and they actually saw it streak across at one point and stuff like that. But what the data we got that evening was that they did observe something on radar just outside the base over the forest. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it was there, and then it disappeared like it went down. You know, it didn't disappear like it took off up into the sky. It looked like it went down into the forest.
Out of radar range.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it.
So, and that's what people need to understand. And it's kind of been a mispoint. There was no reason for us to go off base. Okay. It wasn't an immediate threat to the base. We could see it in the forest. There was no hostile threat. But here was the catch-all. Because they did notify the British police, they did notify the British Fire Department. But because it was close to the base, the fact that there had been radar contact, they felt that maybe something had crashed. Now, it wasn't being labeled as aliens or UFOs at that point, but there was some kind of object that may have went down and crashed into the forest area.
Well, look, it seems to me that if something came down that close to the base, it was observed on radar, then you almost, it seems to me, had a duty to find out what the hell it was.
No, I agree, but that's a catch-all point that people fail to kind of overlook. We didn't just go out there to go out there. There was something there that we, in other words, if all we saw was lights outside the perimeter fencing, they wouldn't have sent us out. But because there was radar contact, that was the defining point of why the shift commander authorized us to leave the base, to include contacting the command post, and certain people were notified of what was going on.
Gotcha.
There had to have been more than just the fact that we saw strange lights out there for us to go out into the forest in the first place.
Right. No, I'm with you all the way.
Right. So at that point, a decision was made that there would be three of us to go out there. Now, there were two security guys, Sergeant Pennison and his rider, and myself, that ended up going out. Now, we left our weapons with Sergeant Steffens up at the gate because we were going off base.
Right.
You know, we went ahead and departed the gate. As we were going down the road, we got to the end of the road again, and we made a right. Okay, we could see the lighting in the forest. I mean, it, like I said, it played games with us. Sometimes it seemed like it was coming towards us. Sometimes it seemed like it moved back. Sometimes it was up in the trees a little bit. Sometimes it seemed to be low to the ground. So we tried to get into the forest, find an area to get into the forest to get back towards where we thought it was. We went ahead and went down, and we found a track road, a forest road that led into the forest. We made a left, and we went down the road, okay, as far as we could go.
Right.
Now, there was a fence there that kept us from going any farther. The road was not a paved road. It was just, a forest track road. It stopped us. At that point in time, we got out of the vehicle. We went up over the first fence, and we started going into the forest, deeper into the forest on foot. We spread out like in a line formation. So our Peniston was to the front. I was more in the center, and Airman Kabansak was more behind me to my right, like almost in like a staggered line formation.
Okay.
We moved out to the forest. At points, it seemed like it was playing with this, whatever it was. We would seem like we were getting close to it, then it was not there. But finally, we went, I can't tell you how far, but we went a little bit of a distance. And at that point, we came like up a berm and down, as we came down this berm into almost a small clearing. Now, there were still trees there and stuff, but there was a little bit of an opening in this tree area. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, there, whatever it was there. And there's a big difference in what Sergeant Peniston saw, what I saw, and what Airman Kabansak remembers.
Well, I've got you. You're the eyewitness. What
right.
did
well,
you...
Do you want me to go over...
I want to... First, I want to know what you saw.
Okay. What I saw was what I drew in my statement, okay? It was like a red oval object, okay? It had a hueish, orangish glow like around it, okay? There was some blue light scattered within it, and then it was like a white light that was the bright light around it. And as we got close to it, the bright light lit up. We all hit the ground.
Yeah.
Okay? And then all I can remember after that was then it seemed to dim, it went up into the sky, and it shot back away from us.
Was there ever, John, anything that went beyond light? Was there ever any substance anybody could make or you could make out at all, or just light of variance?
Yes, there was. That's when I said that the three of us that were close to this all had a different interpretation of what we saw.
Okay.
Sergeant Peniston remembers this. He actually got up after we hit the ground, went towards it. As the lights dimmed, he saw a triangular object. Okay? Mm-hmm. And within the triangular object, he was able to walk around it, and he was able to touch it, and there was glyphs on it. And when he touched the glyphs, he had some kind of download from it. So he remembers it as more in depth as far as it being a triangular object with glyphs and everything else.
You're aware of the recent statements that the code that was uploaded or downloaded to him is remembered bit for bit?
Yes. There was. He wrote out a certain amount of pages after the event, right after the event, and they did surface in 2010 from within his notebook, and they were deciphered, and there was a message, and there were some coordinate sites within it also.
Are you free to discuss the message and the coordinates?
I don't have it right in front of me, but it had to do with mankind itself. Mm-hmm. There were 7 locations, 3 of them in the western side of the world, 3 on the other side over in the European area, Egypt, China, and in Greece, and then the 3 in the northern hemisphere would be there'd be 1 in Central America, 1 in South America, and 1 in Arizona, in the southwest in Arizona.
John, do you recall his making that walk toward the object?
No, I have no memory from the time the lights got bright until they dimmed and the object went away.
No memory at all?
No memory of any of that, seeing any of him having any of that or any of that happening.
Do you have any thoughts on why so much time went by between the event and the notebook?
Well, I'll go into this, and it's something that has just surfaced now in the last couple weeks or 3 weeks that kind of reinforced the fact that there was a notebook and some of this happened.
Sure.
The interesting thing was that after the event, after the 3 days, there was 3 nights of events. When I met with him on Sunday night, because we rode together to work, he talked about something was bugging him and he couldn't shake it. And it would be something that if he talked about it would get him in trouble. Mm-hmm. He also did some hypnosis in, I believe, the mid-90s. And in the hypnosis, it comes out that there was a binary download. It comes out under hypnosis.
Okay.
But the third piece of this puzzle that's kind of mind-blowing to me is that the CIA declassified some documents in 2000, but within these documents, there was a remote view done by Lynn Buchanan. And this remote view was done in 1986, prior to Jim and I going public. And very little had been said about the incident. And the part of it, some of it's missing. But
John, hold that thought. John Burroughs is here. He was there each night of the event, and we were talking about the actually the CIA when we left. And there is one quick question before we get back to that, John. When you approach something like that, and you have no memory past a certain point. And now I'm asking you, what I'm going to ask you is sort of if you can search your own mind and you can recall, I mean, is it like a wall suddenly came down in your mind? I'm sure you've thought of this a billion times trying to figure out when your memory went and how it went, or was it a slow fade or like that? What can you remember of the moment that you began not remembering? That's a hard question.
No, that's a fair question. I would say early on, I didn't spend much time on it.
Right.
We got debriefed. We got told to let it go. If there was anything more they needed from us, let it go. A lot of the stuff that's come up over the years, going back and trying to remember it, I don't remember. But I've never had a memory of any of other than getting close to it twice. I know the second time I got close to it, it really bothered me more than the first time. But the first time, it didn't come clear to what happened with what Pennison remembered till later on when he came out and started talking about some of it, which I couldn't remember. But then you can go back to the third night when I was out there and got close to it again. The same exact thing happened to me on the third night, that the first night. I got close to it, the next thing you know, it was gone, whatever it was.
Okay, but you don't remember the moment of the blackout, essentially. It is a blackout, really. Have you ever thought of doing hypnosis yourself?
Oh, yeah. There's been hypnosis done, and there's a lot of stuff that comes out under hypnosis.
Oh?
Yes, a lot of stuff.
Like what?
Well, there definitely was an interaction that, I mean, it would take at least a half an hour to go into all of it. Do you want to go into that now, or do you want to finish the CIA stuff first?
Well, let's finish that, and then let's not forget to come back to it, because I really do want to hear it. I want to hear what else hypnosis brought out. You bet.
Okay. All right. Well, where I was at was that the interesting part, and I totally understand why people question the notebook, some of the stuff that Jim's talked about.
Right.
I mean, it didn't come out. The notebook itself, the first time I heard of it was, I think, right around 2000. That would have been the 20-year anniversary. And he did a sci-fi piece with Brian Gumbel, and the notebook came out, the glyphs came out, okay? Then 10 years after that, when we were getting ready to do the 30th anniversary, the code showed up. But here's something that you can't discredit, okay? In 1986, a remote view was done by Lynn Buchanan, and Ed Dames was the facilitator of it, okay? And there was follow-up remote views done afterwards too. The report that was released by the CIA, when I say CIA, it was declassified in a bunch of documents, but this was found within these documents. A lot of what he talks about in that remote view in 1986, way before Peniston talked about any of this, or even some of the stuff that I talked about hadn't come out. I hadn't gone public yet either. He confirms it in the remote view. Now, how is that possible?
When you say confirms it, what kind of detail?
What he actually saw an object or a craft. He actually could go around it. He saw the glyphs, the raised things. He touched the glyphs. There appeared to be some kind of like communications that would happen between the glyphs and him. The actual object itself, how it felt, the smoothness, what Peniston describes after, years later, smooth, black, and everything else. Now, this is a remote view that was done, by Lynn Buchanan way before any of this stuff was on the public domain.
Interesting. Well,
now, how could that be?
How could it be? I have no idea.
That's my whole point. This throws another wrench in the whole Rendlesham case, because they were doing this. Matter of fact, a piece of the report disappeared. He admitted to that. There was part of it's not there. He at one point felt there was ET presence there, but it wasn't in the crap, but it was from somewhere else, which is what Colonel Halt has said.
Right.
Okay. So, and this was in 1986, and he did this way before any of this became public knowledge.
Right. I have no clue. But I have you, and
right.
I am particularly interested in what under hypnosis has come out that obviously you say your conscious memory went gone.
Right.
So let's talk about hypnosis.
Sure. And I always like to make this clear. Okay, there's a difference between what I remember in hypnosis, and I'm not saying I don't believe in hypnosis, but there's a lot of people out there to discredit it. So I want to make it clear. I've told you what I remember getting up to it close the first time. Now we'll tell you what hypnosis is.
Under what circumstances did you agree to hypnosis?
Well, that's another whole crazy story in itself. Do you remember back in the 90s when they were going to do that UFO cover-up live show?
Yes.
Okay, I was asked, I just gotten out of active duty, and I was asked by the producer of the show and executive producer, Kurt Brubaker, to maybe go on the show. So I met with him. Then this whole thing came up about, not the first night, because that hadn't come out yet, but what happened on the third night when I was running towards it with Adrian Bustinza. So we finally got around to the point where they convinced me, why not go into hypnosis just to see if anything comes out?
Not on camera. Not on camera.
Right. No,
okay.
Well, it was. It was recorded, yes.
Yeah,
the whole thing was recorded.
All right.
Okay. So I reluctantly agreed to it. Find out later on Bob Emmenegger was behind this, and that whole group of that, and actually ended up getting shopped around to the intelligence agencies to include some other people in SRI. But ultimately, I go under hypnosis, and I remember going into it, that it was actually the life form itself.
Going into it, you mean?
Going into the life form, whatever it is.
Going into the life form.
Yes. The actual energy field or whatever it was that we got close to was the life form itself.
Okay, got you.
And it was able to communicate with us telepathically, to include the fact that when I met up with Colonel Halt before Adrian and I went forward, that there was a telepathic communications between Colonel Halt and whatever this was. And the fact was that it actually Halt felt that I needed to go out there because it wanted me to go out there to meet back up with it for the second time.
Huh.
This all comes out in hypnosis. And I reiterate, this was hypnosis now.
Okay. No, that's fine. I really want to know what came out. Did you, by the way, when you were hypnotized, did you really feel you were under? Do you recall the experience?
Oh, that's the thing. The whole thing's taped, but I went out. They couldn't get me under at first, and this guy did something that finally put me under, and I was out cold. And there was a communications. This is where it gets really crazy, but it was like channeling, where at one point we were back there and communicating with whatever it was. And I don't remember any of this. And when I came out of the hypnosis, it did nothing to my memory to make me remember anymore. I didn't remember it afterwards. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I do.
Now I know. That didn't happen.
I do. So, did they inquire of the nature of the communication? I would imagine.
Yeah, it was there to observe us. It will be back. That there are things going on in this earth that are very dangerous, and down the line, when certain things happen, they will be back, and then they'll go forward from there. That's basically the communications.
So, dangerous things for the earth.
Right, and it was strange because you would think right away everybody hopped on the nuclear part of it, and whatever this was says, oh, it's way past the nuclear part.
It probably is.
Nuclear weapons are not a concern of theirs. Whatever we're doing is the concern that we'll get to that point where they'll have to come in and do something about it.
Well, I'm personally a little concerned about nuclear weapons, but beyond that, I can see that there would be danger for those of us living on this earth and not very far down the line, either at the rate we're going. So that part of it certainly makes sense.
Well, I hate to say this, but based off the hypnosis, which was done in '88, we're coming into that time frame right now.
It feels like it.
Right.
I
can't disagree with that, but it's the fact. Okay, and the other fact that's very, very, very confusing or disturbing to me was things came up at that point in '88, like Mars was brought into the picture, some of this other stuff was brought into the picture, and back in '88, people rolled their eyes, little green men and Mars. Well, now look at all the data that's coming out
yes.
that could tie into Mars and some other stuff. And at the time in '88, everybody was looking, but the interesting thing was I was involved with some people that were in engineering. And it appeared to me on the surface at the time, and I've confirmed it later, they were definitely interested in whatever it was for the technical part of it. Mm-hmm. And they were working hard to understand it and to be able to use it. And one of the questions was the ability, how much time would it take or whatever. I can't remember exactly. It's been a while since I watched it. But it was the travel time between Mars and Earth. And when they asked this thing, it gave the exact data correctly. They were blown away by it and they confirmed it. But that was the point when I was channeling. I was able to give them the exact travel time it would take to get from Mars.
When you were able to see this video later and you heard yourself give that answer and knew it was a confirmed correct answer, it must have blown you away.
Well, yeah, it did. And not only that, when I came out of it, everybody was looking at me like I don't know how to explain it, but they were almost like scared of me.
Well, should we kneel down before him or run?
Something along those lines. And the other scary part about it was that whatever it was going to be coming back from me for a reason. It didn't give the reason, but I would be at some point in time in the future, it would be back for me directly. This is all that came out in hypnosis, Art.
All right. Well, some people turn their heads away from what's going on Earth, but right now, the Arctic waters are melting. We're beginning to enter into a new Cold War phase with Russia, which is going to dominate those Arctic waters. There is going to be new navigation that will make the Panama Canal no longer so important. The world is changing really, really quickly. These are not changes that you expect to see in one lifetime. These are changes that, I don't know, somehow we think of as occurring over many hundreds of years, thousands of years. But it's happening very fast, John. So maybe their warnings were spot on.
It could very well be. And then I want to go, because all this stuff has surfaced over the years. But then when you start finding these declassified documents, it's to support some of this. Mm-hmm. And like I said, now the remote view just surfaced. There's a lot of stuff that over the years that I've worked on that support the hypnosis, support some of what Sergeant Peniston said. Right. And not only that, but even the fact that I just recently was awarded a settlement from the VA that I was injured in the line of duty in Rendlesham Forest by whatever we encountered.
Yeah, this is one hell of a story all by itself, right?
Yes, it is.
How this progressed. After all of this happened, were you treated medically?
No, none of us were. And there's not just me that's had some medical issues either. There's been some other people that have had different problems also that I'm trying to help right now. So it wasn't just me that had medical issues.
Right, but your medical issues are so interesting because it bears on the whole event.
Yeah, it does. And what exactly caused my problems surfaced through the CIA. And they actually helped keep me alive, if you can believe that or not.
I can believe it. So, not everybody in the CIA is bad. It's full of good people doing a tough job.
Right.
All right, so let's go down the health road for a bit here.
Okay.
What happened to your health?
Right after the incident, I didn't feel good. I mean, and it wasn't something that I connected immediately to the incident because, first of all, people have to understand, I was an E3, airman first class. I was at the low end of the totem pole on the food chain. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of high-ranking people who were out there, and I was told to let it go, and I let it go. But right afterwards, I started having throat, eyes, my gums actually turned white. And then a few months later, when I didn't feel right, it was a civilian doctor that found it because I was home back in the States on my time off, and I got so sick, I went into the emergency room because I had to, because I couldn't get back to the base in time, and they found a heart murmur. And the interesting thing is the fact that I could never have joined the Air Force
with a heart murmur, of course.
And they found it, within months after the incident, they found this heart murmur, which then leads down years later.
Did you at that time mention to the medical people that it might be connected to what happened?
Absolutely not. I was told over there in no uncertain circumstances to not talk about it.
Yeah.
Not to let it go. And I'm not even going to tell you that I totally put this together. There was things that happened after that, like when I went in when my eyes started acting up, and the first thing the doctor asked me was, have you been exposed to radiation?
Right.
And I'm looking at him like, well, not that I'm really aware of. Mm-hmm. But it was years after that all the pieces came together to bring this back to that what we were exposed to caused these difficulties.
When did you learn what you were exposed to?
Well, as much as I can tell you, it appears to be terahertz radiation. I learned it right before I was near death, is what it came down to. My valve was the civilian doctors, to go back in time a little bit, the civilian doctors, when I got sick, started having AFib and congestive heart failure, couldn't understand why I was having that problem. There just wasn't anything there. There was no heart disease or anything else other than the murmur was there. But what they were looking at and the data, the medical data that supports it, doesn't support the extreme problems that I was having. So they asked me to contact the military to get my medical records so they could look at it when I first started having the problem.
Sure.
And that's when everything got crazy because it came down to the fact they wouldn't give them to me. I went to Senator Kyle's office. They inquired for my medical and service records. They got told they weren't where they belonged. Then she went back and told me to file for disability. This is before I got really sick. And they would then inquire because she felt my medical records were classified. And this is all in writing. So when people come back and say, I can't support this, I can.
I'm sorry, the initial reaction was they could not find them?
Well, first they said they weren't where they belonged.
That's called lost.
Okay, well, yeah, but what it came down to was she was smart enough to know because she had dealt with stuff with Agent Orange and stuff. That isn't what was really the case. What they were they were classified.
Right.
So what she did was force their hand when I filed disability to have them start admitting to what was going on. Well, they were stalling her because Kyle was getting ready to retire. So I got a letter from her. Well, actually, I met with her first, and she told me that she knows something happened to me. I probably will never find out what happened to me, but that they were going to give me the medical care that I deserved. Well, they stalled them long enough that Kyle retired, so they kicked it over to Senator McCain's office. And that's where it really got interesting as far as the whole thing, even to the point where they altered my DD Form 214. They actually altered my DD Form 214 and said I wasn't in the Air Force in 1979.
Excuse me?
Yes.
In what... All right, we're going to pick up right there.
That's why I figured I'd give you a second, because I saw the time.
Yeah, and John, last we talked to him just a couple of minutes ago, was talking about his DD-214, and he claimed they altered his DD-214 to show he was not in the Air Force at that time. That is a very, very serious offense, altering a 214. My goodness.
Yeah, no, yes, it is. And here's the story behind it. When they handed it off to McCain's office, you know, they got the paperwork, they looked at it. It was as typical, they looked at it like, and I want to be clear on Senator Kyle and Senator McCain's office. They took a chance on this because they had the background on what I was exposed to, what was going on. They had the Halt memo, they had official documents showing something happened to us, but they took the case, and it was a risk in their part because of the fact that the ramifications going back to, where it could lead.
Of course.
But at the same time, they were looking at this with a little bit of an eye like, well, there's got to be an explanation to all this, right? So, all right, so it goes to McCain. McCain, this was when the VA was having trouble in Phoenix anyway, so I hadn't got an appointment. They got me expedited. They got me looked at. When I went in to see the doctor, she started asking me questions, and I started answering them. She looked at me strange, and she says, well, there's a problem here. And I says, well, what's that? She goes, you weren't in the service in 79. We have no medical records for you during that time frame, so therefore what you're telling me can't be true. Well, I pulled out, I had my little briefcase. I pulled out a bunch of pay records and everything else. I showed them to her. Her eyes got real big, and I says, so how are we going to handle this now? She goes, well, this is above my pay grade. I can only give them my recommendation based on what I can look at. I said, fine. I left the office. I told McCain's office this. They were still like, okay, well, let's see what happens.
Well, I wonder what McCain,
hearing,
excuse me, when she reported this to McCain, I sure would have liked to have been a fly on that wall. I mean, she obviously went back to McCain and said, look, on one hand, they say he wasn't in the service, but on the other hand, I just saw evidence that he was.
Well, no, she didn't report to McCain. I'll tell you how McCain found out about this. This is when it got really crazy. Okay. A citizens hearing happened with Steve Bassett. We went up there. When we addressed this to the six people that were in Congress, first of all, they didn't even know there was a classified records section. They didn't even know that. Most of them did. They even took a break and made some phone calls, and they came back, and a couple of them got some inside information that there might be. But they actually put together a letter. They sent it to the President Obama himself, and to the head of the VA, asking them to intercede and help me, okay? Right after that, the CIA guy shows up, and we had an attorney working with us. He shows up and meets with the attorney and starts getting involved. Now, we go along a couple more months, and I get a denial letter in the mail from the VA. And their denial was based solely on two factors. Number one, my DD Form 214 showed I didn't come in until 1982. So therefore, what I'm claiming could not have happened because I wasn't in the Air Force in 1979.
Yes.
And there were no medical records to support my issue either. Okay, McCain's office goes nuts on this. They go, we've got more than enough evidence to show you he was in.
Right.
They went as far as going to AFRPC on this. AFRPC told him I wasn't in. We got an email from him saying I couldn't have been in. I wasn't in. Well, I actually got around this by going to retirements because I was retired, and I talked to a girl on the phone, and I says, well, I'm calling to confirm I'm not retired. When I explained the whole thing to her, she got into my files and got some stuff out that got back to McCain's office, and finally, after almost 2 months of going back and forth, they grudgingly then changed my DD Form 214 back to the fact that I joined the service.
Good Lord. With or without an explanation?
No explanation whatsoever. Matter of fact, McCain, that senior staffer from McCain's office told me this. It was a yeoman's job behind the scenes for us to get this taken care of. But you're not going to know how he did it or how it was done And the next step is to get you medically taken care of, but you'll probably never have any answers to what exactly happened to you. It's so deep. All right. So
it's so deep.
Right. It's very deep. They I don't know how much they found out, but it was clear from the aide in Senator Kyle's office and these people now that whatever happened to us was still classified, was buried very deeply, and that there was no headway on, they weren't going to get any answers of what went on.
Do you think, though, there would be better ways that they could go at this to keep a lid on it rather than to try to actually change it to 14 and a date you were in the military? That's just ridiculous because, of course, ultimately you can prove.
Well, right, but even when we proved it, they at first said no.
I understand.
And that's when Senator McCain's office basically through him said, you better start changing your tune or we're going to open up a full investigation into what happened over there.
And that's when the 214 tune changed.
Well, I think that had something to do with it, but they still weren't going to do anything for me medically. That was still a big holdup.
Okay, that's the next step. I mean, once they admit that at least you were in the military at the time you said you were, the next step is, of course, to try to get the medical records that are now relevant to a life-threatening problem.
Correct, but they weren't going to release them. So along comes a CIA doctor, writes a letter, goes to my attorney. His attorney-doctor-client privilege, okay? But I was authorized to release it to the VA that was starting to look at me. As soon as they got that letter, everything changed. They immediately started treating me differently. Matter of fact, they brought in a DOD doctor. And what ended up being was what they found out, and there's medical proof to back this up too, because this type of radiation can affect the valve. But what the civilian doctors were missing, and now because they had the type of radiation the DOD got in the middle of it, they realized that there's two leaflets within your valve. Front and back is what I call it. The front one showed some damage, but it wasn't enough damage to cause the symptoms I was having. They've never had a case where the back leaflet was damaged. Well, mine wasn't just damaged, it was shredded. It was shredded by this radiation.
Okay. How did they determine the amount of radiation that you had received? I mean,
I've never got a straight answer on how much radiation I got. And matter of fact, I've never got a straight answer from them on even it was terahertz. It was the CIA guy that identified that type of radiation, which is highly classified. It's being used extensively in military operations and weapons and stuff. There is a little bit of it being used in some of those scanners in the airports.
Right.
But it's a highly classified radiation. But that opened the door for them. But then I was handled completely differently then. I was actually being screened. Everything went through this DOD doctor. Even the surgeon answered to him for the whole surgery and everything else.
All right, so who actually got hold of, or did anybody ever get hold of your medical records?
Well, I'll finish it now.
Okay, sure.
I got the surgery. Okay, now the next step was to get disability because my heart was damaged so badly that right now a fracture rate's usually between 55 and 60. Mine's in the low 30s now, but it was down to 10 at one point and then in the 20s. So we were now working on disability, and there was a whole rigmarole about that. They were going to do something, then somebody up high pulled it, and an IG complaint went in, and McCain had to step in again. Finally, they granted me disability, but here was the deal. They granted me disability on the fact that I was on duty in Rendlesham Forest. I was injured by whatever we encountered. That was why my heart was severely injured. But they are not going to release my medical records. They're not going to answer any FOIAs on it. They're not going to tell me where my records are. They're not going to release my medical records, and that I'm being handled by certain doctors that have the clearance to work with me on
this. So they're not going to answer any FOIAs?
Nope. They blew FOIAs. They blew FOIAs to McCain's office. They got caught holding back stuff. They got caught. They wouldn't answer my FOIAs. They wouldn't even answer whether or not the VA ever did get an explanation from the Special Operations Unit that handles.
You know, medical records are a little bit of a different situation, but certainly you would have the right to file a FOIA for your own medical information.
I did, and they won't release them to me.
What specifically did they say?
This is where it gets real shady. They basically leave it as the fact that we've treated you, we've taken care of you, and we're not going to deal with you anymore. And so basically what this was going to come down to is I'd have to file a lawsuit to actually ask where my records were and pursue it from that point.
Wow.
Because they're classified. I mean, McCain's office said it. Kyle's office said it. Do I have it in writing from the VA? No, they won't answer that question. But ultimately, and I even tried to get some of my stuff. I tried to pull a little fast one. I did get a little bit of it before the rest of it got locked down. But it's also, what's interesting is that it's all computerized now. It's in the VISTA system, but the VISTA system is a direct link between the VA and the Department of Defense. And all my stuff that relates to my heart, even a couple of my lower level doctors can't get at it. They've even admitted it to me. They said, we don't have the clearance to look at your records.
What
they
about
had to move me up to a higher level doctor when my heart was
What about the others that were subjected to the same radiation?
That's something I'm working with some of them right now, trying to get some stuff done. And Senator McCain's office, again, is going to help with this. Because now it's real easy. They understand, and they're willing to step up and help these guys.
Mm-hmm. So there are others with effects.
Yes, there's others that have had radiation, appeared to be radiation symptoms. One guy actually, it was interesting, had some issues with his thyroid, and the civilian doctor said the only way this could have happened to your thyroid was exposure to radiation.
That's what it would affect, for sure.
And that affects your mind because the thyroid goes up to a gland, and he was having issues with anger and everything else, and heart issues too. So he's had some of the same issues also.
All right, whether it's yourself or others that were involved at Rendlesham, at any point or at what point do you feel like you were being perhaps monitored?
Monitored by who?
Monitored perhaps by military authorities, whether it be medical or otherwise.
For me personally, medically, that's part of the speculation on why my records are classified, because I didn't know it at the time, but the symptoms I had were looked at by the military. Matter of fact, the heart issue went to right pat. Now, I find out through the grapevine later on, well, you know why they went to right pat? No, not really. Well, where do they did all the work on this stuff? Oh, okay. So along the lines with the eyes, the heart, and everything else, at the time I didn't know it, but it appears that was partly what was going on. They were monitoring that and keeping track of it.
Well, that would imply they knew pretty much exactly what you had been exposed to.
Yeah, and it goes even deeper than that. It appears to me, and I can go into Condign a little bit, which is declassified documents from the British MOD, that it's clear that the governments of the world are aware of whatever we encountered. It's called UFO UAP, but they're clear about it. They're studying it. They're working on it. They're weaponizing it. And there's a good possibility, yes, they were monitoring us to see how we were affected by it, to include that when this became public, the whole health issues, there was actually some testing that was requested. They wanted to look at our DNA and also some other testing that they wanted to do that would have been reaction to what we encountered.
I wonder if they did look at your DNA. Of course, I guess you don't know, do you?
Well, I can tell you this. I denied it, the first part of it. I said no. But after I had my surgery, the DOD doctor came up and wanted to look at my immune system. And the test, the blood that he took got sent away from the VA and was sent to a site. And what I've been able to learn, because a lot of it's locked down, I couldn't even get at it, but what little I did get of it was they were clearly looking at my immune system, which leads to my...
In your opinion, do you feel that your memories have been blocked, or that you've had false memories implanted somehow or another, and of course the next question is going to be by whom. But first, obviously there's a memory block because you were able to say all sorts of things under hypnosis, right?
Correct. And there's another piece to the puzzle. It's Project Condign, which was a report that was done by the British government on UFOs, UAPs. And when you go into the report, and it's like over 400 pages long, but when you go into the report, it goes into the details of this phenomenon. It has the ability, when you get close to it, to see things, may cause different people to see different things. It can block your memory, your long-term, your short-term memory. It can cause all kinds of issues. There's a radiation involved with it. And there's a lot of stuff within it, just like any other reports that, it's like doublespeak or whatever you want to talk about it. But if you go through the report and you break it down, it does go into a lot of things that not only what we were dealing with, but what other people have had, experiences that people have had some kind of encounter.
All right. False memories, that's something else altogether, or injected memories. In other words, could there have been a period of time where the military said, oh my God, this thing has happened, we're going to have to control it, and the only way we're going to control it, apparently, besides manipulating 214s later, is to give somebody memories that tell some different sort of story that I don't know.
That's a valid question, and you can take it for this. Different people remember being interrogated. Matter of fact, Peniston and Hypnosis said they used sodium pentothal on him, or a lot of people say it would have been amethol, but Hypnosis says pentothal. But when you take Condign and you take all this other stuff that's now surfaced, and it's been over 30 years, so stuff starts getting declassified and stuff. You have to wonder if the military itself was perplexed by it. They couldn't really understand it.
Right.
They were in the infancy stages of what we were dealing with at that point. If you know the base where we were at, right outside the gate was some of the most technical equipment, the best equipment we had, both British and American, that were outside, that were being worked on. And there were special access programs going on at that time. And Rendlesham itself, and this has gone on way before our incident and after, to this day, they have weird things that go on that forest. And one of the things that was uncovered was there was a scientific team down in the area right when that incident happened. They were already doing investigative work on that area and the phenomenon itself.
Well, look, I get one night, maybe even two, but 3 nights in a row. At that point, there should have been a very, very serious, deep investigation. There should have been people everywhere. It should have been, by the 3rd night, gigantic, right?
Well, they did. They brought in the team. I think the first night, and I honestly, I can only tell you this based on the research I've done. I don't think the base overall knew what was going on. As a matter of fact, I would say probably nobody on the base had a really good idea, even the general in charge.
Wow.
But at the same time, some of the stuff was going on the base itself, and was going on at Marsham Heath, which was an attachment to the base. But I think quickly afterwards, General Williams was read into a lot of this stuff. Matter of fact, when I met with him with these declassified documents, he was blown away. He could not believe those documents did get declassified, and that they actually admitted to that Rendlesham was in the documents itself. It said that we were exposed to radiation within these documents. He couldn't believe that part came out, or the frequencies, or the fact that within these documents that even says that wing commanders, the people that are in the flying wings, are briefed on this, because there is interaction between pilots and this phenomenon itself.
All right, John, it's a period of 3 days. You mentioned radar once.
Right.
Obviously, over 3 days, unless this thing was on the ground all the time, there would have been additional radar sightings. Were you able to learn, or could FOIAs be filed which learned the totality of what radar knew about all this?
Well, the interesting thing with that is it's kind of like with my medical records. The memo that was put out, the dates were wrong. The Colonel Halt put out in the first place. They had the dates wrong. So they went back and they tried to recover the radar stuff.
Right.
And the dates that they asked for, they said those dates have been erased already. And then when they went back later, they got the same answer, that the data that they should have kept anyway was erased. But that goes even deeper into all the missing files that the British admitted they don't have, and the fact that they're still holding 18 files after they'd said they'd already released everything.
And
but,
doggone, John, they lost all the Roswell records too. It is.
I know. I understand. And that's just it. When the British government said they were being transparent, and I think a lot of people followed this, when they got to the Rendlesham part, there was a huge gap between, there was missing files through the DIS. Their answer was, well, they got destroyed. Accidentally got destroyed. Well, okay. Well, don't you have procedures in place? Well, Nick Pope said, well, number one, they weren't supposed to be destroyed. Number two, if they were destroyed, it should have been who authorized and why. All of that was not there. So there's a huge gap in the missing files. Well, I asked Nick, and he wouldn't give me a straight answer, but I don't think they're missing at all. I think they're still classified at top secret, which is a way to cover this, because if you say I'm releasing everything we have and everything we're releasing secret or below, well, and then we said we're missing files, if they came out and said, well, there's still stuff being classified, there'd be a huge row. But if they just say we lost them, they'll take the heat on that. Now, it goes deeper because of Condyne, and I did a bunch of FOIA, and I slipped some stuff in, and I caught, I think, this guy off guard, because it went from him to the very top. I started getting responses back from the defense secretary himself that they actually admitted they slipped up, even though they admitted earlier on. Remember how they released every file they had?
Admitted they slipped up in what manner?
They said, oops, we're still holding 18 files. And 6 of those files are policy files.
Policy files.
Yes. And it gets even more intriguing. They're in a bind for 2 reasons. Number one, most people don't follow this closely enough. Even these files that have been released, they're still redacted. And Art, you know what that means.
I do.
Their stuff's still classified. Now, when they come back and say, well, here's everything we got, well, that's not true, because, yes, they're releasing documents, but they're still holding stuff that's classified, and that goes right over most people's head, including the mainstream news. And in this particular case, in Condyne and these 18 files, a lot of that stuff is still classified. Now, how can you say it's not a defense significance?
Have you ever actually put your hands on any of these files? In other words, did they release in part something along with a lot of blacked out redacted stuff?
No, not yet on the 18 files. Matter of fact, they're in a bind. When they admitted it to me, I kept quiet for a while, and then I did a press release, and they finally did a short announcement that they were holding more files, and then it got quiet again. Finally, somebody in the House of Lords took it to the MOD twice, and they finally said, well, down the road we're gonna release these files.
Down the road,
yeah. They haven't. I think they finally got a date of sometime in 16. Now, my inquiry started in 13, and in 14 they admitted it. So they're holding files that they didn't have in the first place for 2 more years minimum. And when they come out, yeah, Condyne had a bunch of redacted stuff, and that's what led me to the redacted stuff, which I held in my hand, and I started asking questions about that, and I slipped in a couple of questions, and the guy slipped up and admitted within the redacted stuff there were still files being held from Condyne.
Remarkable.
And they were 18 files.
Absolutely remarkable. I guess they figure if they can hold out long enough, we die. I don't know.
Well, that, and I also think 16 is an important time to release them. What's going to be on everybody's mind in the spring going into the summer of 2016 in the United States?
The spring going into the summer?
Yeah.
I don't know what.
The elections.
Well, I guess more toward the fall.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a big item, and all this stuff going on. So if they casually release these files in the UK, and then they and somebody just says, well, you know, that they got caught, but here's the rest of them. There's nothing to them, which they have people that they hire to do that. It's not going to make the kind of headway it would in the States that if there was no election or anything like that going on.
Yeah, I suppose the election could probably cover up the news cycle a bit.
Right.
But they've really messed up here, severely messed up. And I kind of wonder whether we'll ever know. I mean, you must have days like that as well, John. Whether they'll just come up to the date and then somehow it'll be another date. It'll be further down the line.
Well, that's what they've done with this twice now. Yeah.
Well, I was in the Air Force too. A1C, as a matter of fact. And it seems, I know how things work. And, one day I could imagine John was out there, and John wouldn't be out there on any other day. Not the way the Air Force works. If it's a big deal, the low ranks get abandoned quickly. So the fact that you were brought back, that the colonel felt that whatever it was wanted you back and brought you back, means to me you're at the very center of all this, John. Does that seem right?
Well, okay, there's a couple of things to consider. Number one, I went back out there on the third night on my own. I was off duty. Hypnosis is what that came out.
Right. And Elizabeth writes, she sends me a computer message here, wormhole message, saying, I'm getting lost. Did he finish describing what happened as perceived under hypnosis? I'm not sure we did, really. You said some of it, but is there more?
Just basically that definitely there was an interaction that it was communicating with us, and
that you actually entered this being, or
yeah, well, that's not just from hypnosis. Actually, Sergeant Peniston said he saw me go into it on the first night, and Adrian Bestenza on the third night saw me go in and disappear, and there was missing time on the first night, 45 minutes, where they couldn't account for us.
Wow. All right. Did you come back with a clear message yourself under hypnosis?
Just that they were monitoring us, that there were things that we were doing that concerned them, and it didn't seem like at that point, but they'd come back to monitor from that point going forward, where there's going to be something that happens that they're going to try to figure out at that point, going to that point, how or what they can do maybe to keep it from happening or what caused it to happen. That's the best I can tell you.
John, is there anything over the years that has occurred to you or that you thought of that you have not made public?
Yeah, there's several, quite a bit.
Okay. Proceed.
Well, that's why I haven't talked about it. I mean, I'll kind of sum it up this way, Art. When I started this in 10, it's so much has changed since 2010, 2009 timeframe. When all I really wanted to do, this is before I got really sick, was simply to get us all together, to try to get us to talk about it, which it's funny when some of us now we finally have, we start to remember things and things start to fall into place.
Yes.
And it's clear there's an influence within that doesn't want us to get together. And when this binary stuff came up, which we talked about way early on, that was a mind blower. And all the stuff in between, just the sites, the possibilities, my hypnosis, how things are starting to fall into place from my hypnosis, which it's kind of hard to accept. There's all kinds of things that go through your mind and stuff that you think about and wonder about, or you see in the news and stuff that you're not going to go out and publicly talk about or make a big deal about, because that's where people are going to start to think you belong somewhere in some hospital or something.
Well, you sound sane to me. You obviously belonged in a hospital for a while, not the kind you were thinking of, and were in a hospital for a while, I'm sure. Almost died.
Right.
But if you can relate to me anything that has occurred to you after these years that you haven't made public, I'd be very appreciative.
Well, I would say this much. Based on the research I've done, and there's one thing I want to add to this before I tell you this other part. You'd asked me earlier if there was a document I was holding. I am holding the document.
Oh.
I got sectioned once I got this document. And in this document from the MOD, they've admitted that they've developed a weapon off of what we encountered.
Really?
Yes. And that's when they sectioned me. And the interesting thing was the weapon they developed doesn't belong directly to the MOD, and it's mostly all blacked out because it's involving defense contractors that are working on it for the MOD. And it has to do with time and everything else that's going on. That, as you've noticed in the news, and that's why I'm leading up to this, have you noticed in the last few months how all of a sudden now they're talking about warp drive? They're talking about what I would call impulse power.
It's everywhere now, John. Yes, everywhere.
Right. Well, that's the stuff that I've kept quiet on because I've had some interaction with some government people, some stuff. I know some of the people that are working on this projects, and I know where this is going. And the scary part is it's one thing to be told something, but then to see it actually coming out in mainstream news is pretty mind-blowing.
Let's go back to where you were told something.
Just the warp drive, and the phenomenon itself ties into interstellar travel, warp drive, and everything else.
So are you telling me it was imparted to you by this alien? I think it's fair to call it an alien. That there was going to be, or that there existed a warp drive, or that we were on the way to developing a warp drive, or what? Not directly from my hypnosis, but they weren't concerned about the nuclear stuff. They were concerned about frequencies and what we're doing, which is right where we're at this particular moment in history. It sure is. And I could tell you one other thing that stunned me the other day, and unfortunately I didn't save it. I'm going to go back and get it. But did you ever see the movie Final Countdown? Oh, absolutely. Now, think about this. The movie was done in 1980. They only went back 40 years in time. And look at the ramifications of technology advancements from 40 to 80. The communications problems they had. So all the stuff that went on. Then what that one ship could do, it would have changed history in 1940. One ship. So there definitely was something about time. Right. And now you get into this thing with Peniston and time travelers. Well, he did say under hypnosis 40,000 years. I think he meant 40 years. And when I say that because he really grasped for that time frame. Well, it just came out in mainstream news. There is a craft, an unmanned drone it's in the final stages. It's going to be operational between now and 2020 that we have. That looks a lot like exactly what he drew back in 1980. All right, well, there's a lot here. I want to open the phone lines and allow people to ask you questions. So our public number, by the way, is 1-952-225-5278. Opportunity of a lifetime to ask a question. You never know what you might hear in response. And, of course, the Skype connections as well. Having said that, there was a moment, wasn't there, where laser beams were seen shining to the ground by whatever this thing was, and it seemed to be doing some sort of search. Yes, there were two things that came out and it's on Colonel Halt's tape, and you can hear it in his voice. And I love how people try to say, well, that was a fake tape. Listen to that segment right there where it comes at him and it beams a beam of light down at their feet. Listen to the quiver in his voice and everything. But there was clearly something that was sent down. He has actually said over the time frame, was it a warning? Was it a message? What was going on? And then also one of the other guys out there with him at the time said whatever was up in the sky appeared to be doing some kind of search or grid pattern. A grid pattern search? Right. I wonder what they would have been looking for. Maybe whatever we encountered the first night, that's been some speculation. Did you ever come to terms in your own mind, John, with regard to what you encountered and where it was from, as well as what it wanted or what it was concerned with? That's part of when you asked me if there's things I haven't discussed. Good. It clearly upset me, and it upset the people that were in the room that day, that it was coming back for me at some point. That was definitive. There was no doubt that there was some point in time in the future that it was coming back for me. So it's you feel this is yet to occur.
Yeah, and it's not only that. It's the interest that's happened to me over the years from within the government, different technology people, and even I don't want to go too deep into this, but I've had some people within the tribes themselves that have actually made contact with me, and I've been able to go up to some of their sacred sites and do some stuff. And it all seems, a lot of people believe whatever we encountered and whatever happened is vital to the future of mankind. And that's kind of a hard thing to accept.
But very important to know about. Really important to know about.
Well, I don't disagree. I mean, that's why you can go into the message that Peniston said he received. The sites are all ancient sites. The fact that one of them is the Temple of Apollo, which sits right next to the island of Patmos, and we all know what was written at Patmos.
Yes. So, all right. Well, let's go to some of the folks, and maybe they'll jog your memory a little bit. Knoxville, Tennessee. Hello there. You're on the air.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. I'm Joe. Are you aware that the 29th, the next day after the 28th, same month, same year, that Betty Cash and Vicki Lander had an incident in Dayton, Texas, a light in the sky thing, and they were exposed to radiation like he was. Also, there was some Chinook helicopters that showed up during all this. I was wondering, have you heard of the aircraft reactor propulsion systems that they experimented in the 50s and later on led to the molten salt reactor experiments at Oak Ridge? And then about that time, after the 60s, it was shut down. Is this part of your black ops that you're wondering about? Is part of this as a carryover from the aircraft reactor experiments?
Well, I am aware of the Cash Landrum incident. There has been quite a few people that have tried to look at our case and that case, and they think there's a tie-in because of the time frame where what happened, the dates and the timing it happened, and that there was radiation involved. And I can't say that is impossible. Matter of fact, that's on my next thing to look at. I just haven't had the time yet. But there's a lot of people that have looked at that and feel there's something related to it. And what's also interesting, prior to our incident, there was another incident in the UK that involved a British policeman. And then prior to that, Albuquerque had a major incident that followed the same parameters of what happened at our incident. But I'm not so sure about the reactors and stuff. I think what our incident had to do more with radar frequencies and everything else and less to do with nuclear reactors. That's just my take so far.
All right, caller?
What do you think?
All right.
Do you say on there's those large triangles that I think you saw Art.
Oh, I sure did.
Okay, well, they're powered by something. I believe they're ours. And what's got me was, you mentioned the 80s, and based on the molten salt reactors experiments at Oak Ridge, and which was based off the aircraft reactor experiments, could this be and like I said, we're talking heavy radiation possibilities. What I'm trying to say is this part of the black ops later on that powered these things?
I honestly couldn't give you an answer on that. What I believe the black ops had to do and the SAP programs had to do more with frequencies and the radars and all that and the EM fields, which under my hypnosis that does come up, that what we're doing to the EM fields, which affect the Earth itself and outside the Earth parameters, I think that had more to do with it than the actual, what you're talking about. But anything's possible. And, if you have any information, down the line that you can tie that in, I'd be interested to know about it.
All right. Lewis on Skype. You're on the air with Mike. Yes,
Airman Burroughs. Thank you, Mr. Bell. If I can, I'll ask two questions. I think I'm going to just focus on a current rumor that I've heard, and I want to either quash it so that it doesn't grow or say what you will. On a show on Dark Matter Radio Network, another guest claimed that Sergeant Peniston made a deal to get his medical records for and in turn he would shut up. Does that sound plausible to you?
Well, that I can tell you. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was Congressman. There was a congressman that was at the hearings, and he did a.
Yes.
He actually talked to him. I've just recently talked to him.
That's the source of the rumor.
He asked me what happened to Sergeant Penniston in this, and I gave him this answer. And this is coming from me now, because Jim and I did go to the hearings. We did testify in front of these guys, these mock hearings. He was all on board, and you can see the hearings online, that he had health issues, that he was involved, that he wanted something done. After the hearings happened, and this CIA guy showed up, and the actual Steve Bassett actually was trying to make headway to get us in front of a real Congress. Jim backed off. And when I said he backed off, he actually did post a statement at one point saying the fact that he was threatened, and he wouldn't elaborate, and that he actually had some records he turned over to the VA, and he was now being taken care of, and he wanted to drop it all. Now, it got kind of blown out of proportion that who threatened him, which he never said, number one, and number two, he did drop out of this. And the only question I had on all this was, why would you go in front of these people and say you had health issues and we were going to take care of it, and then later say you had records that took care of all the problem? That just didn't add up. But he did drop out of all of this once the CIA doctor got into it, and and there was an actual possibility that we could go in front of Congress. That's the best I can tell you.
Dee, if I may get a second question in, my dogs always try and blackmail me that they're going to bark if I don't pay attention to them when I'm on the phone. I take it was a large base. Rendlesham was a large base. I'll make up a number, 10,000 airmen. Wouldn't there be a lot of witnesses? And is there some way to get a name of all the people on the base at the time and start trying to get more people to come out of the shadows and explain what they saw? Many, many people must have seen the orchestra in the sky that night, not just the handful that have come forward and are in the spotlight.
Well, first of all, it was the largest TAC fighter wing in the Air Force. Okay. So it was a joint base. It was the largest TAC fighter wing in the Air Force. So it was a large base. Over the years, different people have come forward, talked about it, and then they disappear. I mean, we have come up with numerous people that we've got recorded that have talked about different things, and then they just seem to fade away. And there's been other people recently that are starting to come forward. That I'm hoping somehow, some way, that eventually a bunch of us can have a reunion somewhere and all get together. And I think that would solve a lot of the issues.
Maybe that's a book for me to write, to track down all these folks. But thank you for your time, Mr. Bell.
It's certainly a book
Burroughs.
for somebody to write. Thank you. And to get it all straightened out. I guess straightened out is a pretty good word for it. Let's go here to the phone lines and say, hi, you're on the air. Hello?
Airtime in Richmond, Virginia, listening on WTWW shortwave 5085 kilohertz.
Yes.
John, I really want to thank you for doing this show. I think you and Art, I wanted to thank you both for your service to the Air Force. But John, you in particular, I think, deserve a Purple Heart for the injuries that you received in service to your country, and I hope that you properly awarded that. If not, I think there'd be a lot of people pushing for that to happen. Now, I have taken the moniker, you can see on Midnight Fans, which is one of our Bell's fan sites, of plasma polariton for a very good reason. Plasma polariton is the kind of physics that's activated by these terahertz waves that can produce the kind of energy that you need to do a warp drive. And what a plasma polariton is it's a photon of, in this case, it would be terahertz light photons that are crawling along a dielectric plane with the electromagnetic field, the electric field pinned to the dielectric and the magnetic field free to move perpendicular to that. This is the kind of physics that's going to allow all kinds of new technologies for warp drives, very fast transfer of spaceships to Mars and nearby planets. So,
well, he certainly said that was exactly what's involved.
Yeah, somewhat, and also the fact that one of the things, because I really didn't spend most of my life in this, but the things that concern me the most is people coming out and making these predictions and all this stuff, and it gets people worked up and nervous. And one of the things that I try, and I'm doing my best not to do, is to go too deep into stuff, because honestly, the stuff that came out in '88 just was so hard for me to stomach and believe in the first place, and so much of it's coming true. But I don't want to be somebody that's out there
adding to it.
Yes, adding to it. I do believe, I'll say this much, I do believe these next 4 years are critical to mankind's survival. And what I mean is, do I mean we'll be wiped off the face of the earth? No. But I think where we'll end up in the next 4 years will have a big say in how we evolve over the next 100 to 200 years.
Hopefully we do continue to evolve. All right, let's go to Jeremy on Skype. Hi.
Hi, John.
Hello.
Hey, John, I was wondering, this life force you encountered, could it possibly be looking forward to, from when you encountered it, to what's going to happen next Wednesday when they turn on CERNs and possibly engage a frequency we shouldn't be messing with?
Well, yeah, I've been following the CERN stuff, and there's no doubt that there is some concern there. I mean, it's not just me, but a lot of people, have written about it and stuff. CERN is a very interesting project, and it goes to the God particle. And when you start messing with that, I think you saw the movie Angels and Demons and stuff. It's something that, it's basically science trying to outdo faith, and that's not a good thing. So do I think that the world's going to end next week or the week after? No. Do I think it could affect something that could affect mankind? That's possible, but I don't, in my magic ball, as if you want to call it, I don't think the world's going to end anytime soon. I just don't think maybe we're going to live quite as comfortably as we have over the last 40 or 50 years.
Okay, then my second part, I know Art's acknowledged it, and the caller before acknowledged the triangle sightings over Arizona and other places. What do you make of the Air Force trying to tell us that it was flares being dropped from A-10? We've all seen flares dropped.
Okay,
that's one of the things I've kept quiet over the years. I was actually in Arizona when that happened.
Really?
Yes, I was.
Were you a witness, actually?
I didn't really see anything that night, but what I will tell you is this, okay? The flares came way after. I know that that stuff wasn't in the sky at the time when the first stuff happened. I had a friend who was very reliable that saw something come out from the Tucson area up over Ahwatukee and head out towards Luke. I passed this on to James Fox a few years ago, that something landed at Luke that night that came in and went down and landed at Luke, was there for a short time. And I correlate that from the fact that my friend saw it come over the mountain. The guys out there at the base, I wasn't on duty that night, but they talked to me about it afterwards, obviously because of my background with stuff that's happened in the first place. They couldn't wait to tell me about it. And then it was confirmed later when they said it left. There was a truck driver that saw something leave and go over I-10 south towards Gila Bend. So you're asking me what I think based on technology and everything else. I think it was something we were involved with, and I think there's a good possibility there was something else going on at the same time.
Thanks for your time, gentlemen.
All right, thank you. Do you think that our military, or the British military, or military anywhere has, I don't know, I hate to say made a deal with, but communicated with these beings? Is it your view that that's where this new technology that we seem to be right on the edge of, I mean really on the edge of, is coming from? From contact?
Okay, here's the $60,000 question. I do not know for sure what we dealt with. I've never tried to say that. People have said it was ET. People have said it's time travelers and such. I do know that it's in Condyne, which is declassified documents from the British. They were secret, which is a big deal. And they've admitted in these documents that all these countries, the major countries, Russia, China, us, France, they all are aware of this phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
They're all working on this phenomenon. They're trying to weaponize it and use the technology. I've been in contact with scientists that have admitted to this. And the other factor in all of this is, yes, I mean, you have to look at the weaponry, the advancement in technology. And yes, I do believe, and I have also talked to Dr. Edgar Mitchell about this, who was on these committees, and in Condyne it says they brought astronauts in to study this, that they're studying what we dealt with and what other people dealt with, and what's the first thing mankind wants to do with it? Weaponize it. And they want to use it against each other and on each other, their own countries.
Yes, so, it may well be, John, that what we're talking about here, if weaponized, would make nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. And
well, there's been speculation, if you go back, that this was mainstream. That, remember how Israel was so upset about 2 years ago about the Iran nuclear deal? And then all of a sudden one day there was a meeting, they backed off.
I remember.
A lot of people speculated that they were told that the nuclear weapons don't matter anymore, that we can counter that. Now, does that mean that we could stop everything? Probably not. But does that mean we could probably stop the launching of missiles and do different things like that? That was the speculation that went on that day. And it wouldn't surprise me based on this technology I've seen when I was still on active duty. I was on active duty after 9/11. So, yeah, we made huge advancements in technology. And based on these documents, you can't help but tie it into the study of whatever we dealt with.
All right. Let's go to Florida somewhere. You're on the air with John Burroughs. Hi.
Hey, Art. This is Tom from Florida. Hey, John. How are you, sir? Thank you for your service, both of you. My question is your opinion of this possibly being a test to see how the actual your base would react to something like this. But deeper than that, what if this is actually coming from 40 years in the future because of the drone you said that they were designing based on this technology? I mean, it could actually be the drone that they developed sent back to that time, so it all would happen.
Well, the test part, if you mean, do I believe that for 3 nights they had us running around in the forest in a foreign country and all this stuff going on within the WSA? No, I don't believe that was the test. Now, up until a few years ago, time travel was just science fiction. But in the last 5 or 6 years, it's no longer science fiction. And what Peniston said was they were coming from the future back. So could it be something from the future coming back? I can't argue that point now, especially with all the stuff that's coming to light in the last few months or the last year. Now the question would be, are they coming back by accident or what? That's another whole, Pandora's box.
Well, you know how you said that they were developing a drone that was actually based on what it is that you all encountered that evening?
Well, I said I saw pictures of a drone that's getting ready to go into active duty that looks a lot like what Sergeant Peniston drew in 1980, yes.
Right, and what I'm saying is, do you think it's possible that it's that actual drone going back to you guys in 1980?
It could be very well, and the interesting thing is that's why I brought up the movie Final Countdown. If, in fact, something happened, and there's a lot of speculation between 18 and 22 that a lot of bad things are going to happen, financially, militarily, and everything else. Let's just say this becomes operational, or there's a good chance it already is operational, if you know how the military works. Then something happens here in the future, a year, 2, 3, 4 years from now, it could kick all the way back to 80, because one of the speculations of time travel is it can only go back as far as when it was first developed.
Right. Yeah. That just sounds like that could be a very interesting possibility.
If you'd have told me that 5 years ago, I'd have laughed at you. Not anymore.
Well, thank you, sir, and thank you, Art.
Right. Thank you very much for the call. And let's go here. You're on the air with John Burroughs.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hi. I have a couple of questions for John. I would like to know, John, do you have any idea where these people came from that were in contact with you or who they might represent? And also one additional question. You said that you were under the impression they were going to contact you again. Was there any timeline given for that?
The first part, no, not really. The guy that was doing hypnosis seemed to have some insight, and I can't remember exactly where he thought they were coming from, but I never really speculated. In fact, it's typical my personality. When he said a certain thing, I said it in the hypnosis that what you're saying is wrong, it's not possible, and it was left at that. Now, the part of when they're coming back, it appears they didn't give a direct date, but it does appear the way they described it, we very well could be coming into that time frame right now.
Gee, so you could be getting a visit pretty soon.
Under hypnosis, yes, it's possible, I guess.
How do you feel about that? I mean, is that scary to you, or have you come to terms with it, or how do you feel about it?
Well, okay. First of all, for it to come out in hypnosis back in '88 was mind-blowing and all the stuff around it, okay? But as the years have evolved, it's become more and more clear that what seemed so crazy in 1988 now could be possible. The only question I have is why would they come back for me? You know, why did they make that so clear?
Well, they obviously had,
I don't understand.
they obviously had intense interest in you, or you wouldn't have been going back.
That I can't argue, and that's been talked about, and that's some of the things I don't like to talk a lot about, because just think about it. I'm just a good old boy from the Midwest out there doing my job. Next thing you know, over a 3-night period, I have some kind of contact twice. There's missing time. I get injured by it. And then under hypnosis, it goes into more detail, which seems to be playing out now. And not only that, they're coming back. So, I mean, that's a lot to handle.
It sure is. DD 214 changed, medical records classified. My goodness. He was key in some way to all of this and to them, or in my opinion, he would not have come back even that second night. So, what a great mystery it is. John, I'm sure you've rolled this over in your head 1,000,000 times. Right?
Right. And on the break, I just did check. I know there's a lot of interest from you in my hypnosis and stuff.
Yes.
There is a 10-minute clip of it on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a 10-minute clip of it that was used at one point, and it's on there. So if anybody wanted to go and look at it, they can. And the interesting thing about it was one of the biggest skeptics and debunkers of the Rendlesham case looked at it and said he believed it. So I don't know what to do with that.
And this will come up under your name. A search.
Just put John Burroughs hypnosis, and it comes up.
Really?
Yep.
How long were you under? Do you recall that?
If I remember right, because I don't have at least 3 hours for that one.
3 hours, really?
I've been under a couple other times, too, that were very, very disturbing. So.
Really? Yeah. So other things came out?
Well, this is the whole thing that's just hard to explain. A few years later, this would have been probably around 2009-10, there was a hypnotherapist that got involved. There was some stuff that was done through Stanford and everything, and she actually wanted to take a look. And the weird thing about it was when I went under, there's certain things that started with interesting things like went to a door, I saw pie, and then tried to take me back, and all of a sudden, and it's really bizarre, it was out at one point, but it's I think it's not on the line anymore, but my whole body almost lifts off the chair and I'm shaking. When I tried it, there was like this opening, like a vortex or something appeared, and I was trying to go through it, and the blue lights and something else interfered and wouldn't let me go down and go back in time again. And
wow.
And she wasn't like, people say, well, these hypnosis people, she was actually a therapist certified, and she did a lot of work, and even she couldn't explain it. There seems to be a block even now under hypnosis, that I can't get to where it used to after that one time.
I understand. All right, let's go to a call. Hello there, you're on the air, wherever you are.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Art.
Hi.
John. My name is Mike, and we met in Eureka Springs, Arkansas at the UFO conference. It was Linda Howe, it was you, Jim Mars, and I believe Richard Dolan was floating around. We were at a cocktail party in a little hotel in Eureka Springs, and I came up to you and I said, John, I've had the same experience, 100%. And we started talking, and you were surrounded by all kinds of people. And then Linda walked by, and I told her, and she wanted to know about my dreams, but the same thing, the party was breaking up, and she was kind of ushered off. And I've been trying to contact you for, I think, 6 years.
Yeah, I can remember that. That was a good conference. Yeah, I remember that.
Do you remember me, though? I
remember the conversation. Yes, I do.
Okay, in 1975, I was stationed in Ereskonzern in Kirchgürns, Germany, and in the middle of the night, I had a flat down on the street. I had a girlfriend, and I'd go home, and my job every day was to walk 12 Ks around the post with an M16 with blanks in it, pretending like we were fighting in the Vietnam triangle formation. I was 3rd Squad, 3rd Platoon. One night, they came to my house, 2 guys, Hilger and Russo, that's all I know of them, with their M16s, and they said, Harris, or Mike, you got to come with us right now. This is like 2 in the morning. And I went, whoa. So we went back to the post. They each gave us a box of 20 rounds of M16s and said, put it in your ammo pack. And usually I had to drag around the 90, but that night they just gave me the 16, and we went out the gate, and we started to do our patrol. About 4 hours into it, because it took all day, 4 hours into it, Sergeant Johnson came over and said, okay, you guys, take 10, and we have your rations, the old-fashioned rations with the cans. Sit down and eat them. So Hilger and I and Russo sat down on this perch, and on the right side was the base, and on the left side was my flat, my little German apartment. And we were laughing because we were real close, but it was still about 2 hours hike, and we had to go through a swamp and then load our blanks and all that kind of stuff. So I opened up a can of scrambled eggs and ham. I know it, and I had a P-38, which is a can opener. And Russo said, throw it to me. I will use my last name, Mike. So I threw it to him. And all of a sudden, I swear to God, John, and I was telling Linda, I got to tell somebody about this. I wrote an 85,000 word book.
Okay, let's go back. All of a sudden, what?
Oh, all of a sudden, we hear the whole company. The whole company was out. The whole company, in the middle of the night, first time ever. I was there 15 months, first time ever, with live rounds, not loaded, but in our backpack. All of a sudden, I threw my P-38, and as soon as I did that, John, as soon as I did that, the whole company was in the swamp. There was a back road and a little trail you had to go down, and the place where you unload your blanks, and you're kind of in the swampy area. Anyway, that's about an hour and a half hike in formation. And
I have to take that out. You're going to have to get to the point of your story, sir.
We lost an hour and a half. I came back down the hill. They said they sent a platoon looking for us, and that we crawled under a bush. I said, no, that didn't happen. I ended up in this room with at least 15 brass, and they all had, the smallest one was a captain, and the guys on the right of me had these portfolios, and they kind of all looked the same, and I had a colonel there, and the other 2 guys, and I don't know who they are really, except for nicknames. They just pleaded that they didn't know what happened. They got off, and I wouldn't do it. I said, no, there was no way that we could have been asleep. They said, we sent a platoon after you, my platoon, and you weren't there. I said, there's no way. So eventually they kept saying, you have to sign this statement that I went under a bush, and I wouldn't do it. They said, you can be court-martialed. I said, buddy, I didn't do it.
Okay, I get it. So you had missing time. And you also had missing time, right, John? Quite substantial amount of missing time.
Well, the first night, 45 minutes. And when we came back in, our watches were 45 minutes slow. But they actually they could not account for where we were for radio contact or anything for 45 minutes.
Whew. Just gone.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess you have to look at it from that standpoint. We went out in the forest, and for 45 minutes, they couldn't raise us on the radio, and they didn't know what happened to us.
All right, on Skype, Benson, you're on the air with John Burroughs. Hello.
I said, hey, what's up, Art?
You're up.
I just wanted to ask John a question. I've been listening in and on and off tonight and kind of working around the house and whatnot, but I was wondering if he ever recalled like what beings he encountered or what he encountered out there.
We've been describing that all evening. The only thing you recalled consciously were lights, right?
Correct. It was lights. It was like an oval, orangey-shaped light, with other lights within it. And, yeah, I never saw a craft or could describe a craft, but two other people that were with me actually did, yes.
And under hypnosis, you then recalled actually... That's the part where I wish we had that tape. I wish we could actually listen to it. I'm sure you've listened to it many times, right?
Well, yeah, that 10-minute clip, I've listened to it several times, yes. The whole tape a few times, but the 10-minute clip, it's very moving, and it goes into the part with the interaction with Colonel Halt and the telepathic lights and everything else.
Mm-hmm. You say you want to get back together again with the others involved in this. You really want to do that? Think it's important?
Yeah, I just think it would be really good for all of us and anyone else that was on the fringes, like that one guy asked that saw something or knows something. Mm-hmm. I just think it would be really nice to get us all together and sit down and go over everything.
Are there things that you would discuss with them that you're unable to discuss in a forum like this on the air?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely, depending on how the conversation went and stuff, I would be more open probably with certain people than others, yes.
I see. I wonder what I could do to get you to tell us what you have not yet told us. I can feel it to ask. John, you don't mind if I play a little of this, do you?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, good. This would be John under hypnosis. It's wild. Listen.
Instead of being nervous, like going, what are we getting into? I don't know. What's going on? We don't know. The radio keeps coming back. They can't reach us for a while. We can't reach them. We're getting real nervous. We're getting scared. We can't get on the radio. We can't go much farther if they don't hear us on the radio no more because we don't like what's going on. Sergeant Tennyson, what do you think? I don't know. Stop right now. Let's try to reach him on the radio. Okay, we've got him. Yeah, it's still there. It seems to be in the clearing. It seems to be in that clearing up ahead. Can we go farther? Yes, go on farther. Find out what's going on. Let's go, guys. Look at that. There it is. Hit the ground. I run. I die. Shoot, John, shoot. I can't. I don't have my gun. Who's telling you to shoot? Sergeant Tennyson. I don't have my gun. They told me not to bring it. Yes, they did. They told you at the last minute to bring it.
Describe what it is he wants you to shoot at.
Light. A weird oval-shaped light. It's hovering. It's strobing.
Flashing back and forth, flashing on it.
It's white, but there's lights below it. There's little lights below it. There's the orange lights. There's the red lights. It's like sun. It's like the sun, but it's not shaped like the sun. It's like an oval-shaped thing, and it's pulsating.
How far away is it?
10 feet, maybe 15.
How big is it?
I don't know. It keeps changing. The lights are pulsating. It's hard to judge. It's there now. It's moving back.
Away from you?
It's moving away. It's up in the air. It's moving back. It's up through the trees. It's moving back. It's moving back. Not in the distance, but it's there. It's down low again. How did he get through the trees? I don't know. Well, we'll follow it. Tell him we're going to follow it. We got to follow it. I can't reach him on the radio. The hell with the radio. Put it down. We don't need it. Put it in your pocket. Let's go. We don't care what they say. We've got to find out. Something's there. We've got to find out. Let's go. Spread out more. Okay, let's go. Okay, move. Okay, be careful.
Wow.
I feel weird. I feel tingly. We all feel tingly. We all gotta know. We gotta know. Is it a UFO, John? I don't know. What is a UFO? What is it? I don't know. It's not real. It's light. It's not an object. It does not appear to be a solid, total object. It just appears like it could be an object because it gives the impression of an object, but it's mostly light. It's all light. It seems like light to me.
A shape made of light.
Yes, a shape made of light.
All right, so I'm going to stop there. People can listen to it on their own further than that if they like, but man, that was odd stuff, John. Your voice sounds almost, I don't know what the right word is, manic, very, very different.
Well, yeah, no doubt. I mean, yeah.
Manic is, and you were told to shoot at it, you said.
Well, there was a little discrepancy. That's when I said the three of us have different memories. I guess at one point that there was a discussion that I wasn't involved with where I was supposedly going to be cleared to take my sidearm with me. Peniston knew about it, but I wasn't briefed. Now, the interesting thing was that came under hypnosis. Now, Kabansak has said, and he's done an interview, he said when we got close to it, I actually drew my weapon, and then we all blacked out. So, I don't remember taking my weapon with me, but that's what I'm saying. There's some things that just you can't account for. You can't make sense of.
The pace and the tone of your voice in that was just incredible to me. Just incredible. Let's go to the phones. I think Omaha, Nebraska.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, great show, Art
yes,
and
thank
John.
You.
Yeah, question regarding kind of future happenings and stuff. Out of curiosity, does polar shift fit into the future stuff, John?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what.
He asked about if a pole shift is in the offing, as if maybe you know.
It really didn't say under my hypnosis. It didn't say that, but it did make it clear that whatever we're doing, which is nothing to do with nuclear weapons, but it had to do with EM fields and frequencies, would affect mankind. So when you say a pole shift, I mean, I suppose if we did something bad enough to the frequencies, it could affect the poles itself, which I know that there's a lot of speculation out there that they're shifting as we talk.
Yeah, because did you see that documentary of Chasing Ice by any chance?
No, I didn't.
Actually, the pole is drifting towards Siberia. The magnetic north is drifting. We know that.
Yeah. What happened in this documentary, they showed it, they caught it, but there was a chunk the size of Manhattan Island that slipped. It had broke off and it slipped, but they showed, comparatively speaking, it was the size of Manhattan Island.
I wonder, there are a lot of people right now feeling a sort of a mass, what's the right word for it? There's been this building thing, for example, about this month, September, John, and masses of people are worried about extinction-level events and all kinds of things. I wonder if somehow it's all related. We go through these cycles every now and then when a lot of people seem to get disturbed about something they feel is coming. This is one of those times. We're certainly in it right now. There really are. I know people, John, packing their wives and their children up in cars and taking off to areas that they feel are safe.
Right. There's no doubt that something's going on. You can go back to, was it 2012 when everybody was, concerned then.
This feels even bigger than that.
I can't argue that there is even a bigger shift going on. that's when you ask me, like, there's so much that I've learned, that I've had given to me, that I've come across, and I honestly, and this is the one time, you know, all this doomsdayers, if it happens, we're all screwed. I just don't think this is the moment in time where a lot of that could happen. Do I have a feeling that something's going on? Yes. Do I think that things are going to change? I do, but I can't put my finger on that. I think this is the month where everything falls completely apart.
Okay, well, here is a question for you then. Maybe you can answer an overall question. In other words, do you feel that these entities, these creatures, these aliens, whatever they were, are basically here to help us, here to investigate us, or here to do something not so good to us?
Well, I want to reiterate, this is hypnosis now, not what I remember. Two things stood out in it. They were here to monitor us. They were going to do their best not to interfere. But if it came at a certain point, I think I could only tell you what it appears to be on the hypnosis tape. They had an idea of what went on and what went wrong in the future that brought them back to this time frame to go forward, then to alter what happens to keep it from affecting the future like it did. That's the best I can tell you. So it appears that whatever they're trying to do is to not destroy mankind, but to help mankind.
Okay, boy, I hope you're right about that. Let's go to Newburgh, New York on the phone. Hello.
Hey there, Art. Glad to hear you back on the air.
Yes, glad to be back on the air. Thank you.
Oh, indeed. Love your show. John, you'll be delighted to know this in a certain respect, is that on December 26, 1980, I was stationed at your, and you know this base, RAF Chicksands.
Yep, Chicksands where the DIA was located at.
That is correct. And I worked for an ARC, this base where I was stationed was a top secret facility, and this is what I wanted to say to John, is that everything you are saying makes 100% sense, because I was working that evening, midnight shift. I was off for Christmas. 3 years I spent TDY in England. I did not have to work Christmas. I remember this very clearly. That evening we had incredible activity, amazing activity.
Really?
And yes, it was unbelievable. And
what kind of activity?
Without disclosing top secret information, obviously, it's as John has been mentioning. He said the danger, our frequency, radio frequency, and all that good stuff. Well, that was part of our job to do that in that realm. So he is correct in the sense that what we are doing in the, with messing with frequencies and whatnot, electronic frequency, yes, it is disturbing the, however you want to call it, our well-being for the future. And it's very complicated and it's very hard to try to explain, but he is correct. He is very correct. That evening was buzzing with activity meaning electronic surveillance, and activity was very, very, very busy, very acute.
You were working the elephant cage that night, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes, I was. All right. Not an SP. Now you're AFS.
No, I know exactly, but the elephant cage is what they had there. It was in San Vito and some other places, and eventually it went from that size down to just a little radar.
That is correct. That is correct. Yes, and what you are saying, the two things you are saying about how we, in fact, messing the air with frequencies and whatnot, bringing about problems, and secondly, the fact that Art asked you, well, are these guys really, maybe are they devious? Are they going to hurt us, or they want to help us?
Yes.
It's pretty much hard to curious, as John. It's a curiosity, like John said. Like if we got so advanced, like Interstellar, the movie, if we got so advanced, another say 1,000 years from now, we were able to do these things. We would be curious, kind of hide and seek with them and trying to find out about them. And I think that's basically what they're trying to do. They really don't want to hurt us, but they know something's up. And last thing I'll say is that today, NASA just announced that this was the warmest summer in world history, and by a far wider margin than any time in history. The change is beginning, and it's beginning. It's exponential now. It's out of control. So John is correct when he said 2018 to 22. That is about right.
You know, that's interesting. I had not heard that proclamation from NASA, but I'm not surprised. We've been getting warmest records. Yes. So this is just yet another one. And I wonder how close to the break point we are.
It's now irreversible. Sadly, I wish I did not say it because I have 3 grandchildren. But my goodness,
that's quite a statement to make. How do you know it's irreversible? Even I worry that could be the case. I'm just wondering how you know.
I have a friend who's at the National Weather Service. He's a meteorologist there for many, many years. This fella not only predicted Katrina, but he keeps sending me emails. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. And he's never been wrong. And I'm saying, wait a minute. Whoa, don't my grandkids have a chance here? Give me some good news. His bottom line is that because of the record-breaking volcanic activity for the past 2 years, man-made emissions are not cutting back, and some are trying, but not enough, and so on and so forth. He said it's just overwhelming now that it will be irreversible. But then what will happen is it will then level out. But by 2050, it will peak, and then it'll start to level out. But the damage by 2050, he said, will be horrific, absolutely horrific. And that's not good, because that upsets me personally because of my family.
It upsets me for the same reason.
Yeah.
Does that sort of resonate, John?
Yeah, it does, Art. And the interesting thing, what he talked about, there was Cobra Mist was out there before, and it got shut down because of inland interference. So there was also some stuff going on with that. But I don't know if you remember this, but years ago I used to listen to your show at night. You had a guy come on, and it had to do with your movie. He was a scientist that said this was all going to happen.
Oh, yes.
And eventually we're going to go into an ice age.
Well, I don't know. The climate is under rapid change. I'm sure what the caller said is correct. NASA probably made some kind of proclamation about the warmest ever on record. We've heard so many of those. But yeah, that prediction was made, and it is all coming true. And I am very concerned for the same reason I guess we all are. I have a daughter.
I don't think, though, it has to do that much with mankind itself. I think it has to do with where we're going through the Great Rift right now. And some of the things that's happened in history before, where we heat up and then it cools back off again. So do I think that mankind's expedited it? Probably, because of what we've done. But we've gone through this same thing before in history where we didn't have this kind of emissions from mankind too. So
it's true. Well, look, we're getting now near the end of the program. We're almost done. There must be something you would like to say to everybody, John. It's an honor, first of all, to have you on the air. Big honor. But is there anything you want to leave people with?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I do believe we're going through some rough times, and I do believe things are going to get hard for us. I do think mankind still has the ability to turn it around, but we're going to have to do it collectively, not divide and conquer. Also, Art, you asked me about certain things. Well, I've been kicking around doing a book that's science fiction in nature, but it'll be based on a true story with the names changed and some stuff. So I may put something out sooner than later that'll maybe help understand some things. But the interesting thing is just in the last 5 months, stuff that I thought was going to have to really try to go deep into science fiction-wise is actually starting to happen.
So when you write a book, if you write a book and it's science fiction, we should read carefully between the lines for what you may know that you're putting in.
Not only that, but also the names and stuff that'll be changed. I have to protect certain people that have came forward to me.
All right, my friend. Well, look, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on again, Art.
Take care.
50 feet or more from the initial, I should say, suspected impact point. Having a lift going, we can't get the light all to work. Seems to be some kind of mechanical problem. Let's send it back and get another light on. Meantime, we're going to take some readings with the Geiger counter and chase around here a little bit, waiting for another light on to come back in. Yes, that's one of the five to odd number. Okay, we're now approaching the area within about 25, 30 feet. What kind of readings are we getting? Anything? Just minor clicks. Minor clicks. Reading impressions. One. Is that all the bigger they are? Well, there's one more well defined. Security control. We're still getting clicks. Clicks. Can we read that on the scale? Yes, sir. We're now on the 5/10 scale, and we're reading about third, fourth increment. Okay, we're still comfortably safe here. You don't have a light on? There, it's ready. Security. Can you have them? There's still minor readings. Second indentation. Security. This one's dead. Let's go to the third one over here. Yes, now I'm getting some residual. I can read now. The meter's definitely giving a little pulse. That's what I was going to say. Let's go to the center of the area next and see what kind of reading we get out there. You're reading the clicks. I can't hear the clicks. Yes, sir. Got them at the center, Bruce? Yes. Okay, let's go to the center. Yes, I'm getting that's the best deflection of the needle I've seen yet. Okay, can you give me an estimation? We're on the 0.5 scale. We're getting a couple weeks. At approximately 0125 hours. We're getting right at a half of a millimeter. Last point. I haven't seen it go any higher. Okay, we'll go out toward the now it's picking up. This is out toward the number one indentation where we first got the strongest reading. Yeah, it's similar to what we got in the center. Not in a pod. It's mainly in the center. Looks like an area here possibly. It could be a blast. It's in the center. That's hard to tell. You got to take this my fingers about 3 here too. Up to what? 7. What? Just jumped up to 7/10 there. 7/10 right here in the center? Uh-huh. We found a small blast, what looks like a blasted or scrubbed up area here. We're getting very positive readings. Let's see, is that near the center? Yes, it is. This is what we would assume would be the dead center. Just picking up more as we go along the whole area here now. Up to 7/10 or 7 units, it's calling on the 0.5 scale. Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we make a sweep? Here, I've got my gloves on now. Let's make a sweep out around the whole area, about 10 foot out, make a perimeter run around it. Starting right back here at the corner. Back at the same first corner where we came in. Let's go right back here. Don't let it depend upon you counting the clicks. Right. Okay, let's start it. Then I can put the light on it and sweep around it. It would fly. Put it on the ground every once in a while. This looks like an abrasion on it. Okay, we'll catch that on the way back. Let's go around. We'll go ahead and hit it there. I got any interest right over here. It looks like an abrasion pointing into the center. It is. It may be old though. There's some sap marks or something on it. Let's go on back around. Alright. So it gives some extension on there. Yeah, this is an awkward thing to use, isn't it? see I can carry it on my ears, but this one broke. When we get any further, I'm going to shut the recorder off till we find something. Picking up? What are we up to? We're up to 2-3 units. Deflection, you're getting in close to one pod. Picking up something. Picking up. Okay, it's still not going above 3 or 4 units. Picking up more though, more frequent. Yes, you're staying steady up around 2 to 3 to 4 units now. Yeah. Each one of these trees that face into the blast, what we assume is a landing site, all have an abrasion facing in the same direction towards the center. That's interesting. Let's go this way around the circle here. Turn it back down here. Picking up something. Collection. Let me see that. That's kind of funny. You're right about the abrasion. I've never seen a tree that's never seen a pine tree that's been damaged react that fast. I got a bottle to put that in. Yeah, you got a sample bottle? Yes, sir. For the soil. Yeah, here. Sit this on the ground. You'll notice they're all the same. Okay, from now on, let's identify that as point number 1. That stake there. So you all know where it is. We have to sketch it. You got that, Sergeant Nevels? Yes, sir. Okay. Closest to the wood bridge base. Point 1. Point 1. And let's go clockwise from there. Point 2. Point 2? So this tree is between point 2 and point 3. And 2 other personnel requesting to randomly give you your location. Tell them negative at this time. We'll tell them when they can come out here. We don't want them out here right now. Okay, the sample, you're going to mark this sample number 1. Yes. Have them cut it off and include some of that sap and all. Is between indentation 2 and 3 on a pine tree about 5 feet away, about 3.5 feet off the ground. I've got some more. There's a round abrasion on the tree about 3.5-4 inches in diameter. It looks like it might be old, but strange as a crystalline pine sap that's come out that fast. You see those other trees here that are damaged in similar fashion? Yes, so often they go toward the center of the landing site. Okay, why don't you take a picture of that and remember your picture, and you got to be writing this down. It's going to be on the tape. Right. You got a tape measure with you? This is the picture. Your first picture will be of the first tree, the one between Mark 2 and 3. Meantime, I'm going to look at a couple of these trees over here. We are getting some. You're getting readings on the tree you're taking samples from on the side facing the suspected landing site. 4 clicks max. Up to 4. Interesting. That's right where you're taking the sample now. 4. That's the strongest point on the tree? Yes, sir. If you come to the back, there's no clicks whatsoever. No clicks at all on the back. It's all on the side facing the... Interesting. The indentations look like something twisted as it got, as it sat down on them. Looks like someone took something and sat it down and twisted it from side to side. Very strange. We're looking at the same tree we took the sample off with this, what do you call it, star scope? Star getting a definite heat reflection off the tree, about 3 to 4 feet off the ground. Yes, where the spot is. Same place where the spot is, we're getting a heat. And the spot on the tree directly behind us, I picked up the same thing, and one off to your right. 3 trees in the area, immediately adjacent to the site, within 10 feet of the suspected landing site, we're picking up heat reflection off the trees. Like 5 and up. What's that again? Well, shine a light on again, Bob. Well, you have trouble here, Joel? Yeah. Get right on the spot, and then when you want to turn the light on, you'll notice the white. Hey. You're right. There's a white streak on the tree. Indicates, let me turn around and look at this tree over here now. Just a second. White streak right on the tree. I can see it. Wait, give me a little side lighting so I can find the tree. Okay, off. I lost the tree. Okay, stop. Light on. Hey, this is eerie. This is strange. Here, somebody want to look at the spots in the ground? Whoops, watch your nose. We're walking all over the park, sir. Okay, let's step back, not walk all over him. Come back here, somebody put a beam on him. But you're going to have to be back 10 or 15 feet. You see it? Okay, fine. Okay, lights off.
He took this long to document.
What do you think about the spot? Yeah. Want to see the first spot? Okay, that's what we call spot number 3. Let's go to the back corner and get spot number 1. Spot number 1. Here's spot number 1 right here. Spot number 1 right here. You need some light? There it is right there. You focused? Okay. Look around spot number 1 through the starlight scope.
Take a slight increase in light as I go over.
Slight increase in light at spot number 1. Let's go look at spot number 2. Spot number 2 is right over here. Right here. See it? Okay, get focused on it. Tell me when. Okay. Lights on. Let's see what we get on it.
Slight increase.
Just a slight increase?
Let's try to center.
The center spot. Well, it really isn't center. It's slightly off center. It's right there. Okay. We're going to get your reading on it right there.
Okay.
Tell me when you're ready.
Ready.
Okay, lights on. This is the center spot we're looking at now. Almost the center. Slight increase there. This is slightly off center toward the 1-2 side. It's some type of abrasion or something in the ground where the pine needles are all pushed back, and we get a high reading about deflection of 2 to 3, maybe 4, depending on the point on it.
Yes.
You said there's a positive after effect? Yes, there is definitely. That's on the center spot. There is an after effect. What does that mean? It means when the lights are turned off, once we are focused in and allow time for the eyes to adjust, we are getting an indication of a heat source coming out of that center spot, which will show up on heat or some form of energy. It's hardly heat at this stage of the game. Looking directly overhead, one can see an opening in the trees plus some freshly broken pine branches on the ground underneath. Looks like some of them came off about 15 to 20 feet up. Some small branches about an inch or less in diameter. 0148, we're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmers' barnyard animals. It's very, very active, making an awful lot of noise. It wasn't a pigmentation. You just saw a light where? Wait, where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flash right there. So there it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir. So can I get some? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. Looks to be out maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out. I'm going to switch off. The light is gone now. It was approximately 120 degrees from the site. Is it back again?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's the flashlight set. Let's move out to the edge of the clearing so I can get a better look at it. See if you can get the star scope on it. The light's still there, and all the barnyard animals have gotten quiet now. Yeah, we're heading about 110 to 120 degrees from the site out through to the clearing now. Still getting a reading on the meter. About 2 clicks. Maybe 3 to 4 clicks. There is no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead. It's yellow. I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been. Yellow. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. To the left. Yeah, definitely moving to the left. Two lights. One light to the front, okay. One light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. There's something very, very strange. Get the headset on and see if it gets any stronger. Okay. Give us your rundown. Notation that this is on a beta reading, too. It's on a beta reading? Beta okay. Still has been removed. Okay. Pieces are falling off it again.
But it just moved to the right.
Yeah.
Off to the right.
Strange. Oh, what are you doing left? Let's approach to the edge of the woods up there. Can you undo without lights? Let's do it carefully. Come on. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it's
sort of has a hollow center, a dark center. It's like the pupil of an eye looking at you and winking. And the flash is so bright to the starscope that it almost burns your eye. We passed the farmer's house and across in the next field, and now we have multiple sightings of up to 5 lights with a similar shape and all, but they seem to be steady now rather than a pulsating or glow with a red flash. We just crossed the creek, and we're getting what kind of readings now? Getting 3 good clicks on the meter, and we're seeing strange lights in the sky. 244, we're at the far side of the second farmer's field, and made sighting again about 110 degrees. This looks like it's clear out to the coast. It's right on the horizon. Moves about a bit and flashes from time to time. Still steady or red in color. Also, after negative readings in the center of the field, we're picking up slight readings, 4 or 5 clicks now on the meter. 305, we see strange strobe-like flashes to the rather sporadic, but there's definitely something, some kind of phenomenon. 305, at about 10 degrees horizon directly north, we've got 2 strange objects, half-moon shape, dancing about with colored lights on them. Guessed to be about 5 to 10 miles out, maybe less. The half-moons have now turned into full circles. As though there was an eclipse or something there for a minute or two. 0315, now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones in the north are moving, one's moving away from us. Moving out fast. This one on the right's heading away, too.
Yeah, we're both heading north. So here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal. 330, or 0330, and the objects are still in the sky, although the one to the south looks like it's losing a little bit of altitude. We're turning around and heading back toward the base. The object to the south is still beaming down lights to the ground. 0400 hours, one object still hovering over Woodbridge Base at about 5 to 10 degrees off the horizon, still moving erratic and similar lights and beaming down this area.